Well, for those of you that may be watching this or may watch this, this is our annual one of our meetings to discuss our annual budget. We'll be meeting again next Friday, 2 days from now in the morning, to discuss our budget. Due to the COVID restrictions, we normally have these open to the public, and they are not open to the public this year. So, if you're watching, you may get to see something you haven't seen before. How we come up with our budget and spend your tax dollars. And at this time, I'll turn it over to the county manager to present some of his budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the folks who might watch this, what we're going to present today is the manager's recommended budget. We'll take comments that the Board of Commissioners has over the next couple of days, go back, make any changes that need to be made, present that budget to the public at our first meeting in June, and then advertise for a public hearing on the budget the second meeting in June. And the budget has to be adopted by the end of June, according to state statute. The format is a little different this year. There's more columns on the spreadsheet than you traditionally have. Because of the COVID pandemic, normally you would just come through original request, manager proposed, board approved, department revised, manager revised, and then the next one would be board adopted. But we've actually had the budget almost complete when COVID occurred, and so we created a whole new column just for the budget under COVID, so that as people have questions, we can go back and reference what kind of impact it had. We've also been asked to report to certain state agencies potentially budget changes that we've had to make because of COVID-19. What we're going to talk about today are our utility funds, our stormwater funds, and we're going to get into volunteer fire department requests. So what you have in front of you right now is a couple of things. One is a capital improvement plan for utilities. Mm-hmm. The second is, and this is something that I'll speak to broadly, is the salary study that we did on a third of our employees this year. Some of the recommendations that came out of that study. I'll say right off of the bat, the budget that I'm proposing to you all does not include funding those recommendations next year because of the potential for revenue shortfalls that we could see. And finally, you have the volunteer fire department budgets. These are exactly as they were presented to us, so no changes have been made. So we'll talk through any changes that you all might want to see to the volunteer fire department budgets.
So is this going to be for the full year? I know one time we had talked about doing like an interim through December, but this is going to be for the whole year.
So this will be for the whole year. However, as we roll into November, December, if we see that our revenues, my recommendation would be if we see that our revenues have offset any loss that we had this year and are above and beyond what we projected for next year, then we can start to add funds back in to do whatever the board wants to set as a priority with those extra funds. Kind of a broad picture of what we're proposing is a 40% reduction in sales tax, 50% reduction in building permit fees, and a 40% reduction in occupancy tax. And as you all are aware, sales tax and occupancy tax are large revenue drivers for Currituck County.
What was the percentage for the, I was writing it down, the occupancy tax?
40%. And we developed the sales tax and occupancy tax numbers based on what we were seeing and hearing from some of the rental management companies and what they expected the season to do.
Our association had a Zoom meeting today at 10 o'clock, and they were saying it's looking like March sales tax are down 10%.
In Currituck County, we potentially see more of an impact from a lack of, our sales tax here is driven by and large in Corolla. So it directly correlates to the number of rentals that we have. We have some sales tax on the mainland, but the bulk of our sales tax occurs in the Outer Banks during the summer. And like I said, hopefully I've missed it. Hopefully I'm way off. I mean, that won't be any problem with me. And that, by December I come in and say, man, guys, I feel foolish. We're only 10% down. And then we can add money in. It's much easier to add funds back into a budget if you come out ahead than it is to take it out if you realize you've got a problem. So keep that in mind. So the budget's going to be very different. And last year when I presented a budget to you all, we discussed a lot of projects that were upcoming. We'll get into some of that with utilities. But when we get to the general fund on Friday and occupancy tax on Friday, there's going to be very little capital spend in the budget. The other thing that we did reduce is transfer tax. here in Currituck County, when you sell property, 1% of that comes back as transfer tax. We reduce that just on the chance that the economy slows to the point that lots and homes don't sell like they have in the past 3 to 4 years. So I did take that revenue back to what it was in 2010, I believe. And that obviously was a pretty lean year. So, like I said, hopefully I've underestimated revenues greatly, and we can look at adding some stuff back in December. But my recommendation would be to adopt a very conservative budget right now, see how the economy rebounds from the shutdowns that we've had in our state and our community and even in our country, and then from there move forward. So, any other kind of broad questions before we start getting into the individual utility budgets? All right. So utility budgets, solid waste budget as well, are enterprise funds. So they are not funded directly by property tax or sales tax. You do have a property tax in the first one we're going to talk about that is specifically for the Ocean Sands Water and Sewer District. However, they operate outside of what we think of as, when people think of the budget typically for the county, they think of general fund. These operate outside of that. They're maintained as a separate fund. Some funds flow back and forth because of administration fees and that kind of thing. But because of that, you will see capital spend in utilities because we have not projected a huge decrease in the amount of water and sewer bills that we're going to see for next year. In Southern Outer Banks, if we had a lack of visitors for a while in the summer, it could impact the water bill. However, there it is a little easier to pull that money back because it typically is based around chemicals, supplies, that kind of thing. And the capital in all of these are going to be coming from tap fees, essentially, that have been saved over the years, or development fees. And so we'll get into the capital improvement plan as we go through it. So this is the Ocean Sands budget. So if you as we go through this, the section in green is the budget from the year that we're currently in. I would kind of tell you to take a look at the revised budget number and compare it to what we have for next year. Revised for COVID is the proposal that I'm putting to the board, and what you'll see whenever, other than changes that you all request, what we would see the first meeting in June. And so the Ocean Sands Water and Sewer District Fund is a little different. It doesn't have any salaries. Essentially what this is just for people in that tax district who receive water and sewer. And so it's for the Ocean Sands subdivision development, and Crown Point falls in this as well. So you'll see a couple of salaries. That is going to be for the sewer side. You're going to see, and then as we go down, you'll see that the operational costs are split into water and sewer. So once again, we're not projecting any kind of major revenue shifts in Ocean Sands Water and Sewer. No new positions, and that's something else I should mention. We've even cut new positions from our enterprise fund, so there will be no recommended positions in the budget this year until we get to December, and if we see that we could add some positions because revenue's coming higher, then we can have that discussion. In this case, Ocean Sands wasn't proposed to have any positions anyway.
So looking at that, what you're saying is in that the original budget's pretty much staying.
By and large, this budget just transfers over. The operating costs stay pretty much the same. So on the operations side, on the water, it went up about $20,000, $25,000. On the sewer side, it actually went down a little bit. It went down by a little over $50,000. The bulk of that is in contracted services sewer. We had a project that we were working on out there. We had the end of the completion of the construction for Ocean Sand Sewer Plant. So that's why there's some money that is coming out. So that brings that down. One thing that I do want to mention on all the utilities, we are proposing to do a rate study on all of the utilities next year. So we'll have an outside consultant come in and tell us if our water, sewer, and solid waste fees are basically paying for the operation. So our goal is never to make money on water, sewer, or solid waste, but we have to break even. We've got some that struggle with that, and we feel like by looking at some of them, we can see, okay, is there a reduction that should be warranted, or is there an increase that should be warranted? And we felt like getting an outside company to come in and do that and give kind of an unbiased look would be the best way to do that. Plus, from a staffing perspective, we've got an awful lot on our plate to do as far as studies and utilities over the next year anyway. So obviously there's an increase of about $90,000 or about $80,000 in capital assets. Water stays the same. There's no major capital. The things that we're proposing on the capital improvement plan for next year for Ocean Sand Sewer, there is a mobile pump station that they'd like to purchase. So if they have a pump station that goes down, it's on a trailer. They can pull it out and keep the sewage moving from one place to another. And then manhole rain pans, which are essentially things that go inside the manhole. So if you have a flooding event, you don't have a lot of what's called I&I into the sewer system, so it's not inundated by rainwater. It helps cut down on some of that. You're also going to see some funding in here for things like cleaning of the lines. We're required to clean 10% of our sewer lines every year by state rules. And so you'll see as we come down, the revenues, the projection is that it would be $153,000 more spent than would be collected from the property tax and from the bills that we would charge, the water and sewer bills. But that would come out of what is called retained earnings or fund balance in Ocean Sands. That is essentially pulling the capital cost out. So, and it's pretty common to pull capital cost out of fund balance in utilities. You've either got it from rates where utility bills have been set aside or from tap fees, as you'll see when we get into...
The revised COVID?
Yeah, so that the revised for COVID, that's the one that we... Yeah. That's the one that we changed because of the impacts that we felt we were going to have from COVID. And that'll be common. Those same columns will be the same throughout all of the budgets that we look at over the next couple of days. Any questions on Ocean Sands, Water and Sewer? All right, we'll go to Mainland Water. You talking about capital improvement plan? Yeah. So as we go through Mainland Water, from a financial standpoint, Mainland Water is very healthy. It performs well. We've got a solid retained earnings amount in Mainland Water. Once again, do a rate study in here as we go through the year. No new positions are added. You'll see a slight increase in salaries, and you'll see that in different departments as we go through. You still have longevity increases that people will receive. So as you can see on the expenditure side under personnel, we have a slight increase. On the operations side, you have a slight increase.
I'm sorry, can you point that out there, because I'm having a hard
Yeah.
time seeing that.
Here versus here.
Yep.
And that's the last column again is the revised COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Can you increase that font a little more maybe?
Yeah, let me see what we can do here. I apologize, I'm used to doing this on the screen and there, that's much bigger.
That's a little better. Okay, that's better, okay.
Got a social distance.
No, thank you, okay.
We'll definitely keep that in place with you then.
So then as you go down to operations, water, the budget there has an increase. System supplies has gone up some. And contracted services has increased as well. And then finally you have debt service. The water does still carry some debt. And so the debt service payment, and that debt is, when does it come off, Sandra? Do you remember?
I don't, I can look it up and get it for you, but
Let's see.
it has several years.
And then finally, as you go down, so capital outlay is is double. It's a little over $1 million. The reason for that is if you flip to the second page on the CIP for utilities, There's a tank maintenance, disinfectant feed upgrades, and a SCADA upgrade. SCADA is the system that basically allows our water plant operators to see what's going on in the water plant remotely.
Which page you said?
Second page, on the CIP outline.
Okay. You said it's a paint?
Water tank maintenance. So we did that. I don't know if you've been over to Corolla in the last few months. We did tank maintenance on the plant in Corolla about a year ago. It's a 10-year contract, so that will continue to stay in there. You have the automatic meter reading projects. That's replacing more of the meters.
When will they all be replaced? I was thinking they were down.
So the actual project won't be done until FY 2022. What we've finished is the ones for this year, and we had some meters that had gone non-read, really old meters that weren't reading any water. Those have been replaced, I believe.
Excuse me, can you guys turn your mics on, because I'm not picking you up, and it's got.
Okay, thank you.
Check.
Sorry.
And then you do have, so one thing that you'll see that in utilities you won't see other places are vehicles. Once again, they have fund balances that don't come from property tax, sales tax. They're not dependent on those. And so we do have 2 vehicles, a meter reader truck and a supervisor truck.
Okay, so again, the number up there that I'm looking at under the board approved, that was approved in last year's 2 years budget.
On the blue,
No.
you mean?
No, in the 2021.
Yeah, that was the number that was approved in last
Year's for this year's
for
budget.
the second
Okay,
year. Yep.
yes. Okay.
And so you have an increase there because we went through a capital
Yep.
planning project. If you remember at our retreat in February, Eric laid out the capital improvement plan that they had devised.
Okay.
Any questions on mainland water?
So the total was the million and two
The
increase for the different things. That was slightly over $1 million.
the increase for the capital
Yeah.
is a little over $500,000. So capital assets were the budget that you all approved was $585,000, and it's at $1,080,173 in the current budget. In the budget I'm presenting to you. Excuse me.
$1,080,000.
Yep.
Okay.
So total expenditures are are a little under $1 million more than what we approved last year for the second year, which is the year we're going to be going into. But the reason for that is the capital outlay expenditures.
Which some of those are state required.
Some are state required, but I mean these are things. I mean, like I said, the staff put a lot of effort into figuring out where we need to head with our water, and so the document that you've got in front of you lays out a 5-year capital improvement plan, and there are major improvements in the next year as well. But once you get into the next year, you start to talk about things. If you remember, we talked about a new booster station. This would be in FY 2022, and other things that we need to improve so that we can make sure we've got good redundancy so that we can keep water moving back and forth to the lower end of the county. And of course, capital improvement plans shift. I mean, as things change, some things may push out, some things may, get closer. It depends on growth rate, especially in utilities. Any other questions on mainland water? All right, we'll go to Southern Outer Banks water next, I guess.
We want to skip the developmental fees.
Well, we can go to it real quick. This is going to be the maybe the shortest line item that you're going to see. So if you remember, we had to do a developmental fee study. You all adopted developmental fees. We used to call them TAP fees. In order to account for that, we have to keep them in a separate fund, and they can only be spent on capital purchases. And so what you see here is the mainland water developmental fee fund. So we anticipate collecting somewhere around $425,000 of developmental fees or TAP fees. And so part of that will go to fund some of the construction projects that we're going to have next year. As you can see this year, for $550,000 is our revised COVID amount. That was based on the fact that this year we actually took in $1.1 million on mainland water of developmental fees.
Compared to what it was originally 550.
Yeah, the one that 425 is what we thought it would be a year ago.
But now we're gonna hit 1 point.
Yeah, and it's the rate of growth. I mean, it's just the number of taps that are being installed in Currituck County. Hopefully, what we'll see is that all of the revenues, though, that we project are going to come in low. I mean, they won't all because of COVID, but we would hope that all the revenues that we projected a year ago will be lower than what we think they'll be now. So, but and the reason for that is that we always try to budget conservatively. So myself, the finance staff, everybody who works on this, we always try to, in the budget, estimate expenditures higher than they might be and estimate revenues lower than they might be so that we don't end up, because if you do the opposite, you end up in bad financial condition. So
you think that 550 was a good number, or you think that was too low, based on what we did last year? Because I mean, that's a $500,000.
I'll put it this way: we are potentially looking at a water plant expansion that's going to cost $1.2 million in 3 or 4 years. And so I'm comfortable saying 500, collecting $1 million and putting that in the fund balance to save that, so that when we have to fund a water plant expansion, we don't have to debt it.
Okay.
So, and in my professional experience, if we budget revenue, we'll spend it. If it comes in over and it's not budgeted, then it'll go into fund balance, and it helps us out whenever we have an expansion or a rainy day, something like that. All right. Southern Outer Banks water. You'll see as far as the revenues go, no real change to revenues over what the board approved for the second year of the budget last year. No major changes to personnel expenditures. No major change to administration expenditures. Operation expenditures went down just a little bit, but not much at all.
Let me go back up top to this is the Outer Banks revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're projecting those to stay. What was it at? I did what we budgeted last year.
Mm-hmm. For this coming year.
So for this coming year. So then that's the assumption that the same amount of water use is going to be used, which would mean the same amount of visitors and guests would be there using the same amount of water.
As you've seen, if we're using, then we're making the assumption that the same amount of visitors of water from last year is going to be used this year, so that number is going to stay. Basically, what you're saying is we expect the same amount of visitors as last year. Then, what we see here is that if you look at the number that Sandra just highlighted, our projected actual for this year is 2.9, and so we're projecting a budget under what we would project even with losing the months that we've already lost. So while we expect our octax and some of the other things to be down, the water usage and I've asked the Southern Outer Banks water system to actually track it. Through the month of March, it was lower. Through the month of April, it was lower. As we got into the month of May, we are about...
you would expect that to be lower too, then.
Through the month of May, actually, it's come back. And the reason, I think, is that we've seen non-resident property owners.
Okay.
So they're there.
Yeah, but still not at full capacity. But if it's gone up just with that little bit
Well,
Yeah.
visitation, then.
we could have a lot of pools being dumped right now.
Well, I think that could be it too.
They're rather green right now, and that's the fastest way to.
And so with an enterprise fund, The only thing that we could change in the budget if we felt like the revenues weren't going to come in here, which I am comfortable with that revenue on the Southern Outer Banks water, but we would have to pull it from retained earnings.
And I'm not questioning, that piece of it. It looks like we're making an assumption that our guest and our volume is going to stay the same as it was last year. Then we're not, that this COVID is really not going to affect it that much.
People will be washing their hands a lot more.
They're going to wash their hands.
Well, maybe
They're gonna
that's
use-
it too then, so.
And Mike, just so you'll know, the way this projected actual is programmed in here is if the department told us what a projection was, it pulls the higher of what their projection is versus actual. Almost all of the revenue side are actuals as of today, because I pulled this stuff this morning.
Okay.
So we've already collected that 2.9 this year.
That's pretty good then.
And what was the number that we had budgeted of? We've collected 2.9.
The budget amount, the revised budget amount was 2.2.
So we collected over what we had budgeted.
You've already
so.
collected over what you.
Yeah, so.
When we hope that happens in every revenue every year, because that's how we stay fiscally healthy.
No, I'm just letting it just.
Yeah.
That assumption makes it look like the Outer Banks is going to still be strong. even
Oh, I know
if
the
it's-
numbers were down probably in March and April, but like you said, May's.
May seems to have come back, and like I said, they do it every couple of weeks. They send me the report. Consumption's back. It's off by maybe 100. Give you kind of a point of reference. We're due roughly 1 million gallons a day in the month of May, on average, and we're somewhere in the neighborhood of. Actually, it's 1.1 million gallons per day, and we're in the neighborhood of like 1 million gallons. So we're just
Some 100,000
It's-
off.
just barely off. I mean, so with everything that's going on with no visitors,
I know, that's what I was looking
There's
at.
a
Just
lot of NRPOs down there.
Yeah.
looked like we missed a lick, really, but okay. Yeah.
March and April, but
which are I mean, luckily are not our high
Yeah,
Volume.
those are-
volume
yeah,
months.
April hurt.
they're not going to affect much.
No.
So, as we go down through the expenditure side, personnel, like I said, is pretty flat. Administration, pretty flat. Water operations, held pretty much stable from last year to this year. You got debt service there. And then capital, if you look once again at the CIP outline, on the third page, you'll see the Southern Outer Banks capital outlay. The bulk of what you see in that capital outlay plan is a water main upgrade to Albacore. And we have to do that so that then we can add a new RO well the next year. So all these things they domino. So we need to do that so that we can do this. And so that as we move forward, you're ultimately working towards, a plant expansion in 2023. But then you can also see there's a major water tank project proposed in 2024. One of the things that we want to make sure of is that we've got plenty of storage capacity so that if we have any issues like we had last year with the hurricane where water becomes an issue, we've got plenty of vertical storage. So, once again, they're a very healthy fund. Right now, it's hard to project out to 2024, but those other projects don't see any need to even talk about debt for those. We should be able to cash those projects.
No, I mean, that looks good for next year right now.
All right. Up next is Mainland Sewer. And this is going to be probably our most difficult conversation of the day today. I sent an email to the board, I think it was last week, that the Moyoc expansion that we have proposed has come in with contingency at $11 million. I'm not even going to get into the operational cost right now. I want to talk through that first, and then we can get into the operational cost. We're still going to need an operational budget for next year because no matter what direction we take, we're going to operate a sewer plant for a year, I think. I'm pretty comfortable saying that. I proposed to the board that there's really only 3 avenues that we can take going forward on Moyoc Sewer. The first is to build the $11 million expansion. In a best-case scenario, that gets us 200,000 gallons of capacity. The current plant, if it cannot make limits and we had to shut it down, then you're really only gaining, in a worst-case scenario, 100,000 gallons of capacity. We have to build something because of the fact that the plant up there struggles, and we're under an agreement with the state of North Carolina that either we will do something or something will be done to help fix that problem. We've brought consultants in. We've brought mobile plants in. One of the big issues is that the waste that comes into the Moyock sewer plant is quite a bit. It's twice as strong as what typical municipal waste is. And so that means it costs a lot more to treat it, and if a plant's designed to treat a lower strength waste, it just won't do it because it doesn't have enough time for the material to go through the chemical, biological processes it has to go through. So the first option would be to build the plant for $11 million. And then I'll go through kind of the pros and cons of all these after I lay out what they are. The second option would be to look at a redesign and see if we could lower the cost of the plant. And then the third option would be to seek proposals to see if a private entity is interested in purchasing the Moyock sewer system.
Ben, if you could just to recap again, just so anybody listening out there, and explain again how we missed this by double.
Sure. So the original estimate on this project was done in-house. It was done about a year and a half ago when we were applying for some grants. It was a $6 million estimate. That number was based on a pretty good rule of thumb that typically when you build a sewer plant, you're going to spend $30 per gallon per day to treat it. And like I said, that's with typical municipal wastewater. So you've got $6 million that you started with. There is approximately $500,000 that increases just over time. Cost of construction just goes up. Materials are more, labor's more. There is approximately $1.5 million because this plant sits so far off of the main road, we need to make major upgrades to the road, upgrades to the water lines. And so that $30 a gallon per day number is essentially derived for plants that sit off of a paved road. You know, ours is, to get back to the site of the expansion here, I think it's 1.5 miles that you've got to go back and over. And then the biggest increase, which was a $2 million, is an increase from the fact that the waste is stronger, so it takes the cost to $40 a gallon per day to treat it. So that gets you to $10 million. The other $1 million is contingency. And so that money, hopefully, if we did the project, wouldn't be spent. But, you know, you have to, I believe in building in a healthy contingency on any kind of project, but especially our wastewater projects. So it's just.
So when you say the waste is stronger, what does that mean to the average person that's right?
So let me think how to explain that.
20%.
So basically that you test for certain things. So when I say that we have to meet limits, those limits are for things, there's biological oxygen demand, or BOD, there's nitrogen, there's phosphates, and so you test for those. So normal wastewater, and BOD is kind of the thing that you can look at to tell you how strong or weak waste is. Normal wastewater in a municipal system is going to run somewhere around 300 when it comes in. So without getting into the science of what biological oxygen demand is, just know that normal comes in at 300. Up there, the biological oxygen demand that we're seeing coming into the plant is 575. And so, which means nitrogen's higher. So you can treat those kinds of things. You just have to provide more space and different technologies in order to get that number lower.
So do we not know that ahead of time? I mean, we've been operating there for a while. Why was it a shocker, I guess? The best answer I can give you is that until we got into the design phase for this project, I don't know that they were testing the influent. So that when I say, so influent is the stuff coming in, effluent is the stuff going out. Normally you test the effluent regularly. We had been without a utilities director for a little while. Our new utilities director believes strongly in testing influent, got a really strong sewer background.
And so typically you would continue to test that, especially if you start to have problems on the back end of the plant. The problem with the current plant is you can't test that when you build the first plant because you don't really know what your influent is going to be. And that can come from several things. It can come from a lot of fats, oils, and grease. It can come from a heavy concentration of commercial customers on a sewer plant. And in this case, it's probably a little bit of both. Our customer base on that sewer plant, we do have quite a few homes on it now, but there's a lot of commercial and it's a lot of fast food and restaurants that cook in a lot of grease. And so those things cause, BOD and nitrogen and that kind of stuff to go up. And so ideally you would be testing the influent when you start to have issues, and then what you would do in a perfect world is if you've had good influent all along and then your influent gets strong, you then start to take samples at the pump stations, so basically where the different points out,
right,
and start trying to trace it back to where is this super strong stuff coming from. Hopefully, in best case, you can trace it back to a single user, and then you use your ordinances to tell them you've got to install this, you got to make that change, you got to do this. Worst case scenario, it's coming from a lot of different places, and it's hard to trace. We're hopeful that we could see some reduction in the influent strength using a stronger fog program, which our wastewater system is doing that now. Fog, so let me back up. I'm using acronyms, and I shouldn't. Fog is fats, oils, and grease. And a fats, oils, and grease program in a wastewater system, if you've ever worked in a kitchen, there's normally this grease trap that somebody has to clean out, that whoever low man on the totem pole has to clean the grease trap out every day. So basically it's making sure that their grease trap, doing regular inspections, making sure grease traps are clean, making sure that the equipment's operating as it should. So you should be going and doing regular inspections, especially of restaurants, to make sure that kind of thing is happening. To do that, though, you need a proper staffing level. And we've talked about this in the past, that prior, the Mainland Sewer had essentially 3 employees to run 3 sewer plants and do collection. And you can't do everything you need to do, so things drop. And the fog program's not required by any kind of rule. And so when people start figuring out what they can't get done, it's one of the things that drops. Now we've increased staffing. We're doing more fog program. And like I said, our new public utilities director's got a good sewer background. We've done a lot of education with businesses. We started ramping that up probably in January pretty heavily. As we all know, restaurants it's a weird time for restaurants right now, though. Some of the restaurants actually that are on the sewer system haven't operated in a couple of months. Which is really interesting because we've seen the influent improve a little bit as we've been checking it. But I can't sit here and tell you it's because of our fog program, or is it because these restaurants quit operating for a little bit. So I'm not comfortable yet telling you that we found what fixes it. I think there's too many potential reasons that it could have come down. That's a long answer, Bob.
Right. Well, that's good. We only talk about it every so often, or never at all.
Yeah.
And,
so that's so to get back to kind of the options that we've got in front of us. There's building the plant. I have some real serious concerns as your county manager about moving forward with building the plant. $11 million is a lot of money, and we can't debt it. The reason we can't debt it is the sewer system runs on such a tight financial budget that the LGC might not approve us to go out and get debt for this project. And even if we did, then we'd have to pay for the debt out of sewer revenues, and there are no sewer revenues to pay for that debt, which means that you would have to look at a rate increase, which we did one last year to offset a legislative change. And I think it's hard to go to people and ask them for a rate increase again. We could take the $11 million out of some of our funds that we have, where we've saved money over the years. But as your manager, I would encourage you not to do that because of the fact that we have a lot of capital things that we're facing in our near future. And I don't know that $11 million being spent on a sewer plant that provides sewer to essentially, 300 users, or 600 users, is the best way to use $11 million of the county's money. So right off of the bat, I think that the pros of going forward with spending the $11 million, it would be the fastest way to get sewer capacity in a big way available in Moyock. Now, we are still moving forward with opening up Moyock Commons. If you all remember, we talked about that at the retreat. That will give us about 12,000 gallons per day of capacity if commercial businesses want to hook up in Moyock. So that buys us some time between here and whenever the expansion would be built. That's really the big benefit to going ahead and building the plant. I mean, we're probably a year to 14 months away from hopefully having an operating plan if we pulled the trigger and gave the notice to proceed. But I have concerns about the financial position it puts Currituck County in if we do that.
So if we go private, and they decide they want to expand a plant, what does that mean to the end user? They're probably still going to have to increase fees to cover their debt, right? I mean, either way, do you end up kind of in the same ballpark for the consumer, I guess?
So not necessarily. So private companies have, okay, so I'll use private companies that get into this line of work are typically pretty large. And so $11 million is a lot of money no matter who you are. But when you're talking about a major utility company, $11 million, they don't even hardly notice it in their books. I mean,
haven't we had meetings with like a couple of the different people that there is interest out there?
So let me back up. I think in speaking in general, there's interest around the state of North Carolina for private companies who are interested in acquiring government sewer plants. So, I mean, I think we would have proposals that would come in.
I mean, historically, I know probably in the last decade, that's something we've taken it on the chin with the
Well,
sewer plants. I mean, we've lost.
Well, we've had issues with trying to find skilled, trained workers to come to our area
Levels.
that have the correct certifications and training, because coming here, we've had issues with that. We've had issues with our past design and installation of our Moyock plant that didn't work out properly. That cost us trouble. We're not wastewater experts. This county's not. I mean, there's a lot of negatives for the county actually staying into the wastewater, not wastewater, but the sewer business, to where there's experts out there that do this daily and have the manpower and the staffing that could probably come in and do a better job than I think that, in my opinion, that we're doing right now.
Well, and there's kind of a theory that, government should do, especially when you're talking about enterprise funds, which this is, government should do the things that a private sector either can't do or won't do. And in this case, I think the private sector would have interest in our facility. And Moyock is a really unique place for sewer. I got kind of interested in looking at some numbers the other day, and I'll give you kind of an example. So there's a city in North Carolina. It's 4 square miles and it has 23,000 people and it has sewer. Moyock how many square miles was it? Well, to give you an idea, Currituck County has about 23,000 people and 500 and some square miles. Now a lot of that's water, but so my point being that sewer systems typically come where there's a lot of density because it makes sense because you can hook up a lot of people quickly, and you don't have to run a lot of line everywhere. Now, Moyock is starting to get some of that density. Not saying the density has to be there for the sewer, and also not saying that you all, as the Board of Commissioners, don't have to approve density just because sewer's available. I think that's another important point to understand about if we sold, because you govern the density of properties through rezonings, not necessarily through sewer. I mean, as a matter of fact, rules have changed in the state of North Carolina, so a developer can come in and look for density and go actually through a different process using kind of septic tank drain fields to get more density. We've seen that in some projects here in Currituck County.
Well, the one issue I still have is, like you'd brought up, $11 million to build a plant in Moyock, where we have, the entire tax, the whole county, that's tax dollars from the whole county funding an $11 million project in Moyock for a handful of residents. That's a lot to spend for that project like that, where I think a private
the last
entity
10
can come
years,
in and
we have
probably take care of it.
historically, the last 10 years, we have had sewer issues. And like Commissioner Payment made up a great point is, I'm not in the sewer game. We don't, I mean, like I said, as far as to get somebody here, I know it took forever to find the person with the proper level, and then I guess didn't we send somebody to school?
We do. We typically have people who are operators in training. One of the reasons for that is that there's no reciprocity between Virginia and North Carolina. So, I mean, you might be the best sewer operator ever in Virginia, but when you come here, you start at level nothing.
Correct. Yep.
And so,
There's no reciprocal.
So, I guess you're looking for a recommendation from the board at this point in time?
well, before we get to that point, let me give you the second option and talk through that just a little bit, because I want to make sure that you all have all the information that you need, or that you could have. The second option would be to try to find a way to lower the cost through a redesign. And so that could be something like taking the current plant, turning it into what we would call pre-treatment, to knock that level of influent down some so that you could treat it through more traditional wastewater plants. You're probably only going to save a couple of $1 million, though. I mean, so you're going to go from an $11 million spend to a $9 million spend.
I just keep going back and looking at that redesign we tried to figure out in the Moac plant last time.
Yeah.
Bit us in the well,
Yeah.
Repeatedly.
Yeah, repeatedly. That we tried to redesign it for something more efficient,
Yeah.
and I'm just personally leaning one of the seven,
Private.
leaning toward looking to see what options on the private sector that might be interested to look at this.
So if that was the case, to kind of lay out what that looks like, we would put out a request for proposals from private companies. Mm-hmm. We would lay out the assets that we have that we would be willing to get rid of. They would send us proposals. The process would probably take a year, just because it is very complicated. We need to go through the Utilities Commission. I mean, there'd be a lot of steps that we'd all have to work through. So, like I said, we'll still go through the operating budget, because it's going to have to exist to get us through the year. But that's the process that you'd be looking at if you decided to.
But after that, then the operating budget would go away if it did take over, and then that would save us even some money. Well, not all of it, but that particular plant's operation.
That part would. My other recommendation, and this is getting ahead of the horse just a little bit. The other recommendation is, no matter which way this goes, I would recommend to the board that we take the wastewater budget, but especially if we privatize, we take the sewer budget, we combine the two funds, because essentially your sewer employees then are going to be doing water work too. And some of the water employees are going to be doing sewer work too.
Okay.
And so at that point, it just makes sense to.
We're more efficient that way then.
Yeah.
This plant's been a boondoggle before it was ever built. If Eric was here, we had Hobbs Up Church do a study, and it was not work. Financially, it wouldn't work. It would be difficult to go in and tell a person, you've got a working septic tank, now you've got to pay $100 a month to flush your toilet. And it's not going to work to existing people up there. The idea was to do new residential development.
Right.
But the original intent of that plant was commercial.
Yeah, it was.
100% commercial. And I know when we finally decided to go forward with it, we had to borrow money out of the general fund to finance it. And I made a motion that money be repaid. Have we made a dent on what?
It's never been profitable enough to pay any debt back. I mean,
That's why if we go, that's another good point.
Sell it.
So,
I mean, it's going to be a money pit. That's what we ought to name the road going back there, Money Pit Lane.
right.
There's already one of those, I believe,
Tom
in the
Hanks
county
is
on the
not in
south
this
end.
That's in Shawboro.
Yeah, there is.
But seriously, I mean, this is going to be a financial drain from now on, like it has been previously.
If a worst case scenario occurred and you only get 100,000 gallons out of this plant, I can't see where you ever get above water financially.
You wouldn't.
Well, I mean, you could get a portable plant will do that, correct? 100.
Oh yeah, so a portable plant. You've got portable plants that'll do 60 to 120,000 gallons a day.
So $11 million.
What would a portable plant cost to buy?
I don't know what it would cost to buy that. The issue that we would have is that the portable plant is designed to treat regular strength wastewater. So you'd have to double up. That's what you'd have to do. But then we get back into the concern that I would have if we started talking about something like that is, well, then are we doing the same thing we did with the first plant where we're trying to lower the cost so much that we end up with something that only halfway does what we need it to do?
That's exactly.
I don't want that to happen.
If a private company comes in with issues with the state or anything, it's on them. Mm-hmm. They got to do the manpower. They got to do the maintenance. They got to keep it.
And we just tell them to call them.
They got to go through the Public Utilities Commission.
They
to
do
their rate charges and whatnot, and it'll take a big headache off of this county. Long term.
So the rate charges, that's what I worry about. People.
The state, they'll regulate it. You can't go crazy on it.
So the way the state works, and obviously if we head down this path, we can provide a lot more information because we don't deal with the Utilities Commission. I'm not as well versed in that as some other people may be, but they use the cost to provide the service, future capital plans, and there is some profit margin, but there's a certain percentage that they can make in profit.
Yeah,
I think the Utilities Commission says you can only make this much profit.
You can't go crazy with it.
But they do have to go. The Utilities Commission has to approve any rate increase for a public utility in North Carolina.
And we can't be accused of padding the pockets of the county through rate increases.
Yeah.
But we certainly don't want somebody that's on the sewer system now to go from paying $30 to having to pay $75.
Well, and I think that there's some things that we can talk through. If we did head down this path and you had proposals and we picked a proposal and it made sense, as you start to negotiate the sale, you can put things in that say that you can't have so much of a rate increase for the next so many years.
It out.
You can't do it in perpetuity.
Steps are just slow for
you can give some protection for some period of time to citizens, but it probably won't be. I'm just going to be upfront. It probably can't be that they can't have any rate increase because what I'm telling you is that
either way, they're going to have a rate. Even if we deal with it, they're still going to have a rate increase.
They're going to get a rate increase if we have to build
if we couldn't subsidize it with the $11 million from other funds, we'd have to do a rate increase to cover debt service. Mm-hmm. It's extremely costly to provide sewer up there because it's not a city density. It's just.
And we've gone 8 years now and haven't repaid a penny on the debt.
We repaid some debt back, but I don't think it was debt that the county loaned, was it?
No,
it was a bank
No,
note.
it was bank loan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so I don't know. Like I said, I've done the revenue projections. By the time you get to where it starts to turn some profit, you have to build another expansion, and so you got to turn right back around and spend another.
You're always chasing your tail.
Yeah.
And if we do sell it, I want the funds to repay the general fund, that loan.
I'd have to look in to see how that. We could definitely repay that loan. We probably could repay transfer tax money that we spent. There's probably some that we would have to keep in some kind of enterprise fund that might have to go to the water. But we have plenty of water projects too. It's not like we don't have a place to.
Sounds like it's a win-win so far with the discussions going on.
The big concern, and Kitty hit on it, is what happens to the rate that citizens pay.
Right.
That's the tough thing. And it's we doubled the rate. I recommended doubling the rate last year because of the fact that the state laws had changed and didn't allow certain things as far as tap fees being used to subsidize the operating cost. And it's just it's a tough situation.
The city, we'll use that, our closest example. They raise sewer rates every year. And I think Rich Olson proposed an increase for this coming year.
Sewer's expensive. It just
is.
And it's getting worse because of the fact that the limits are getting tighter. And so to give you an idea, Moyock Commons, it's like we can have twice the strength out on the back end after you've treated it as what you can have in a new plant. And that makes it tough too. It just, but the system has value, so I think we would have proposals. We've got some land that, I would recommend that goes with it because we've already got a plant there. We've got infrastructure running back there. And the other thing is that I would encourage you all to consider is if we're going to do this, we sell the entire system. Some places will want the county to keep the collection side. You do not want to do that because
Nope.
you're going to be replacing it. It wouldn't be good.
Well, we certainly don't want the people of Mayock to think we're throwing them under the bus.
Yeah.
And we certainly don't want to make the other people think that, oh my God, this is just another way to get more houses up there, because I've already heard that.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I think so on the housing part, the important thing for the board to remember is sewer is not it's something that has to happen to have more density, but the Board of Commissioners has control over the zoning of these properties.
Right.
So if
That's where we
You
have
can
to.
do septic tanks, you can do engineered.
Yeah, I
services,
mean-
there's options, I mean,
But if you all don't rezone something, then the density can't go up, even if they've got sewer. That doesn't guarantee
Right.
density.
It's up to the board to draw a line somewhere at some
Yeah.
point.
And as far as the people in Moyock feeling like that they'd be thrown under the bus, I think the challenge there is, and this is where you all have a very tough job. The challenge there is weighing out the cost of this project and what it does to the entire county versus the benefit that's gained from doing it. And as your manager, I just don't see the $11 million. If it was all coming from sewer money, I'd say let's do it. But the fact is, it's going to be $11 million that we could spend on other capital projects.
And I just think that at the back end of this is the residents or citizens up there are, I hate to say this, but are probably going to get a better operational system and better, I mean, just professionals that have been doing this for 30, 40, 50 years or longer.
Well, I think we have a good staff. I think it's just, if you let me plug along at it for another 15 years till I retire, maybe I can fix it. But it's not going to be fixed in a year, I can tell you that.
The thing about a bigger company, the economies of scale on the materials they
Yes.
use
Yeah.
Right.
They
will
can probably
be
build the
more
plant more
efficient
efficient.
for the long term. I do think it'd be to address what Kitty's raising. I think we would see less increase in our private system rates than we would if the county maintained it, because it's got to stand on its own. It's an enterprise fund.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like what we're doing right now in this country. We're printing money that we don't have. And that's what we would be doing in that sewer. We would be spending money that it won't generate a repayment on.
I mean, essentially, it's the entire tax revenue of the county propping up this one part. Owen, your point about the fact that there's economies of scale. I mean, a major sewer provider or utility provider, this thing could show. It's going to sound crazy to say, but they might be comfortable with it showing a loss forever because they can write that off. I mean, so they don't. It's not the issue for them. I mean, for us, it can't show a loss, right? It's illegal for us. We don't get a tax break on something else because this thing runs in the red. And so but like I said, it's a lot to think about. I mean, I'm not necessarily, maybe you guys can take a night or two to think about it, and when we get back together on Friday, we can get a recommendation if you all want to do that. And then if you wanted, we could always go out for proposals and then also ask for qualifications if you wanted to try a redesign, but I have concerns there as well. I will say that I think we definitely should reject the bids that came in. I don't see how we can spend $11 million.
And the redesign is going to cost us more outlaid money anyways.
You're going to spend another $200,000 to $300,000 on a redesign.
Okay.
Private.
I don't think
I
we
still
need to
say
sleep.
we go after the
I don't
man that
think-
sold
I
us the
don't.
pig in the poke.
I don't.
If I were on the sewer system right now, could I decide if I had enough room and it would perk that I could put a septic tank in?
Yeah.
Okay.
But you can. I want to make clear, most of the houses that are on the sewer system, though, do not have the room for a septic tank.
Right.
That's the reason that they hooked up to sewer is because...
Older homes or older land, if you have.
But like you said, if the county had it, they're going to see a rate increase.
I
Probably.
don't see how you could
And
maybe...
it might be a less
belong-
rate increase if a private, because of volumes of stuff and whatever. I mean,
Let's let us sleep on it.
we can sleep on it, but I'm going to
Sleep
be
on
private
it.
on Friday
I
too.
think there's 4 of us here that are. Selena's been awfully quiet over there. What are your thoughts, Miss Jarvis?
It seems like if you're weighing the pros and the cons and the cost, definitely privatization seems like the least horrible option.
Lesser of two evils, yes, ma'am.
But we need to make sure we protect those people who are already on it.
Well,
Yeah, I agree with that too. I mean, we can sleep on it till Friday
That's in the negotiation portion
Negotiate
of it.
that.
That's the putting the deal
for
together.
whoever's trying to privatize it. They had to.
And you can project out, say if we went with the 11 million, do an analysis, what rates would have to go to
If it was debt service,
Yeah.
pay the debt service and
Okay.
stuff like that.
It's going to be up there.
They're probably cheaper going private.
we can do that. We can come up with a reasonable debt service. We won't put it out a crazy term because we try not to debt utility stuff more than 15 years. That'd be the maximum term.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's going to be around $1 million. I mean, I tell you, it's going to be around $1 million a year debt service.
But a private company could go further than that if they wanted to then.
They could.
Yeah, if they wanted to, yeah.
They could.
$11 million to a private company's probably pennies.
Depending on the company.
If they're in the
It's
in
a
the
big
game
company.
across the states or somewhere.
Yeah.
Plus, you got to figure the debt service we're already
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
indebted for.
Well, the enterprise, this would have to pay for itself, right?
Yeah.
If we debt service, we'd have to increase rates to cover the cost of the debt.
So I can give you what the rate increase would have to be if you debted $11 million. And I'll even say $10 million because there's, like I said, $1 million in contingency. Let's say best case scenario, you don't touch your contingency.
Yeah,
So
what you just said though, the increase in yearly, and we're a year, so I mean, you're probably going to spend it.
So, but yeah, I mean, we can project that out tomorrow and have that available to kind of chew on Friday.
That's
Okay.
fine.
All right.
So we'll talk about the operational cost for Mainland Sewer. Now, keep in mind, we're going to talk about operational cost here. This is the cost for the Moyoc plant, Maple plant, and the Waterside Villages plant. The conversation we just had about
Moyoc.
privatization is just Moyoc. The other plants don't have those issues. We're not looking to add new customers other than at Maple, where we would add them within the Commerce Park. So as you go down,
Can I ask one thing though? Would it be worth our while to get rid of all of them? If we're going to get rid of Moyoc, why not get rid of the other two? Get out of the sewer business altogether.
we can, when we ask for proposals, we could ask for prices on all three. I would encourage you not to do that in Maple, because that is specifically there to provide for the Commerce Park. And so if you sell that system, then in theory that capacity goes other places than the Commerce Park. And so that would be just a concern I would have there. At the Waterside Villages plant, a similar concern, but is that, I mean, the capacity could go other places around that area, but I think the Maple plant you'd want to hold on to, because basically right now its capacity is at about 50% capacity, but I mean it's going to be the public safety building, it's the airport, it's the COA building, it's the Y, it's the cooperative extension, animal shelter, and jail. So I mean it's all our
Because right now, okay, and getting to Kitty's point, we could theoretically do this Moyoc private station, and then in a year or two from now, if things develop differently, we could look at, hey, would you want to take over this one and this one as well, and expand it to them or offer it to them later.
You could. I mean, like I said, we can write the proposal and ask them to price all three systems. Give us
One get one free.
These two.
at least two of them.
Okay.
We'll buy one get one free.
But but we could
price.
offer the other ones later on if we so choose
Yeah.
to as well.
Well,
Okay.
they might not want the other ones. I can realize how you'd want to keep
So
and get the
I will
third
tell
one
you that as a private company, I would have. I mean, I think that a private company is going to have some concerns about the other two, just because you're not seeing quite the rate of growth there that you are in Moyoc. I mean, the reason somebody's going to want to buy the plant in Moyoc is that there's stuff happening in Moyoc. I mean, there's a lot of growth that's. I mean,
Right, it's potential.
Well, and then they can build the plant that they want
Yeah.
to cover what their needs is. They know what they're getting versus
Yeah.
what they're buying.
and they can scale it quicker than we can.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so we could look at getting out of the sewer business altogether on the mainland. We can't get out at Ocean Sands. We have to keep that one contractual. So from a operations budget standpoint, Personnel is holding the same as it is under the revised budget, and pretty close over what you guys approved last year for the second year of the budget. Administration hasn't changed very much. Operations,
Pretty,
I mean, it's pretty tight. The debt service came off, and then so let's talk about capital outlay though for just a second on sewer. And this is where I would like some guidance on budget on this, and it can wait for firm guidance until we get to the conversation on Friday. They wanted to do some extra things. We cut some things out. The SCADA we cut out because of the fact that they just don't have the funds to do it. We do need to make some upgrades to the Maple building. We've got some things we need to do at the waterside villages, and then also they wanted to buy a mobile pumping station for the mainland as well. I don't know if you need another mobile pumping station. If Moyock, you have a lot of pump stations in Moyock. You don't have a lot of pump stations at Maple or waterside villages. So Ocean Sands could probably share a mobile pump station.
Okay.
so you're looking at this page right here, correct?
I'm sorry, looking at
Which says sewer capital improvement plan.
yeah. So this was the presentation that was made to you guys in February. So we can look at that one as well.
Well, no, okay. I was,
Make sure we're on the same page, Ben.
yeah, I just don't know.
So yeah, so they are different. So if you go to this one, when we went through and looked at the budget for sewer, you're going to see that we trimmed some stuff back. So there's another handout that says CIP, and it's got a date of 5/13/20.
Yep.
So we trimmed back the design of the Maple plant expansion, and you'll see the big reason for that is that even with a reduced capital outlay of $210,000, we're still going to run expenses over revenue of $386,000. So I guess what I'm trying to tell you is if you take capital out totally, we're still $176,000 in the red on sewer. So we're going to have to get into fund balance, which there's not a whole lot there, just to offset that little bit of money
For the wastewater?
for wastewater.
Well, unless you just said, or it's possibly going to have to be increased.
Or it would be a rate increase.
Yeah, which-
I mean,
yeah,
so
yeah, I
I mean,
hate to do that.
I'd say if we're really serious, is when we get to Friday, we can make the decision. If we're serious about taking proposals to sell the wastewater plant, I wouldn't recommend a rate increase. We can run off of the reserves for, you could probably run off of the reserves for 2 or 3 years if you had to. There's not a whole lot of way to make the operational cost of sewer a whole lot tighter, other than we've got the contract operator up in Moyock right now. We could eventually get out of that and lower it if it took a year and a half. But that's probably the only way that you could substantially lower the cost.
Now that's costing us a pretty penny too, just to have
It
that,
is.
right?
It is. And that decision was made because, one, we wanted some expertise. We needed more boots on. But if you got rid of that, you'd probably have to add a position. I mean, because a wastewater plant needs somebody there all the time. I mean, it just does. I mean, because stuff happens. And when stuff goes wrong at a wastewater plant, if somebody's not at it,
It's bad.
yeah.
That's
In a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Literally.
okay.
So, so yeah, I mean, I said earlier that that you were looking at pretty sound financial conditions on your water and on ocean sand sewer. This one's
The mainland sewers are.
mainland sewer is not in great shape.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. We've been at it for about an hour.
Yeah, I was gonna say we stop a point for you.
Yeah, we're kind of done with water and sewer at this point. We're gonna get into solid waste next.
Oh, more exciting stuff. All right.
Hey.
Today's a fun day.
Yes, yes, sir. So if
All
you
right,
all
go.
are ready, yeah.
Let's take a little 15-minute recess and stretch the legs for a few minutes and get back at it. Okay, well, welcome back. Ben, what you got for us next?
So we're gonna go through the solid waste budget next. And after we get through, I'm gonna give you guys an option on a way to save some expenditure money, but it potentially causes inconvenience to some of the citizens. So I'll just preface it by saying that. So as you look through the revenues, solid waste is funded primarily from two ways. It's funded from utilities charges, which are the annual household fee that people pay.
Could you blow that up a little bit more to phone?
I can't, that's
Oh.
why I'm,
She's
Oh, I'm
shaking her
sorry.
head.
Okay, I apologize. Then. Okay.
Bottom right.
let me get Deb and see.
Oh, it's mine.
All right, we're on. Ben's got it.
All right, I'm gonna try to do. Oh, wait, she's switching.
Whoops.
I was gonna say,
Anybody watching? This is not how we normally do these meetings, so bear with us.
it was getting really big on my
Please
screen,
excuse us for.
but it wasn't doing it.
Okay.
Deb, you can leave it on mine for right now. That's fine.
I love the pictures.
There we go.
You don't have the current one.
Oh, okay.
I'm on the one on my desktop.
Oh,
Well, then we need Sandra's then.
yeah, we do need Sandra's.
All right.
Okay. Are you on that same screen, Sandra?
It's a.
I'm trying, but it's,
Okay, let me see, let me try it.
All right.
Well, okay. While we do that, I can go ahead and explain the savings
Okay.
proposal. One of the things that cost us about $400,000 to $500,000 a year in solid waste is the haul charges, the amount that we pay to haul from the different convenience sites to the transfer station near the airport just for bulk boxes. So these are boxes that you would put large things in. So we could save approximately $400,000 if we said that the mainland convenience sites would not have bulk boxes anymore. So if you wanted to get rid of a toilet, a couch, bigger things, you would have to take that it's pretty centrally located, to the landfill, or not landfill, but the old landfill, to the tipping floor. The other reason I think that this is a good idea, if you've ever gone to get rid of a bulk item at any of our convenience sites,
He can't get it in.
You can't get it in the box.
In a truck. Yeah.
I mean,
Gotta
because
have two people to throw it in. 'Cause
yeah,
it's
whereas
heavy.
the tipping floor, you just push it off the
Put it
back
right
of your
in.
truck. So
And you get to go see the.
Be prepared for the phone calls, and we'll have to have some land for
I mean,
Fight Club
it-
when people are going to be mad.
I don't know.
So
the Grandy location I see two people.
The
That's,
TVs, when they had the TVs, were only at one location.
yeah.
People were throwing out the old TVs. So man, it was a nightmare.
Well,
That
what I
was
will tell you
previous.
is that there's only two options. One is that, and two is a rate increase next year.
what are we talking about? A rating?
We'd have to have a rate study to tell us what it would be, but so. And
But we could save almost $500,000 by one. But like you said, if you went to the dump to throw away a sofa, and your children are young, you're not.
Or
You're not,
can.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to get it. Compared to if you go to the other place and you push it off the back of your
Get out.
truck right in there, I could see it. It's
We're spending about $40,000 a month.
Well, let me
$500,000.
just say this. I have been to the push one, and you get out of your truck and you walk with your shoes under that to push it off. It stays on your shoes. It gets back in your car. I mean you get most people who want to walk in there. I mean, it ruins your shoes. I mean, I would say
Rate
maybe,
increase.
but you get people that are going up there and getting out of the cars, backing up and pushing. It's that's whatever's on that surface is awful.
Well, that brings up an interesting point, Mike, because in Chesterfield, where my other home was, we backed up. They had a guardrail, and you backed up to the guardrail, and you threw it into the bulk container underneath, where as opposed to getting on a pad where everything lands.
Everything they just do everything there, and then
Right.
they push all in, and all that slime and stuff is
Yeah,
all, and it's
so,
just
right.
it's awful.
I mean, so we can go through all of the different options for ways to kind of configure these types of things. But as you do that, you're going to start to spend the cost savings that you would see.
Yeah, but long term,
I mean, yeah,
so
but
if we
you could
change,
buy
if we
some.
changed how we did business at the Maple Park, just how you dispose of it when you pulled up, like what I was saying, where you get out of the truck and it's relatively dry. You're just, the boxes are underneath.
Yeah.
You're tipping them into the box. You're throwing.
I
whatever
hate
in the
going
box.
up there because I don't want to get out of the vehicle. And if we started making people do that, I bet you'd get a ton of phone calls for people wanting you. I mean, it's just.
Well, you could
nasty.
change like he said, you could change where you're not in it's rough mud. I've done
Have
there.
you been up there yet? Have you looked that up in there?
So I worked on one of those tipping floors for about 3 years.
Okay, well then you know.
So I know. I mean, I'm very
no, 'cause
familiar with
when
what
you get
it,
out of your vehicle. I mean, all that slop
Yeah.
is right there. It's wet and just nasty.
There are probably ways to have a drop off point, but I mean, it would be considerable savings. And most, and I'm not going to say all, but it'd be interesting to see this area. I know other areas of the state, they don't take bulk items at every place.
You
Because
drop by them all over the place where it's just
yeah.
household.
And where they do have them, and this is what you were saying, I think it was Bob, they've got an elevated thing you drive up, but then a lot of places have that for all your trash, not just your bulk. Because brush is just as bad. I mean, trying to throw a truckload of brush up into those roll-off boxes can be.
But if it was a cleaner location like that, where
Right.
you get out and you're not stepping in all this
Funk.
funk and it stays with your feet and in your car, that smell stayed in my vehicle for
You
weeks.
never.
I mean, you could always, and we'd have to look into it a little bit. You could always pave an extra pad to, outside of the true what we call tipping floor is what it's called.
Yeah.
Which would not be a lot of cost. It wouldn't be $480,000 a year to pave a pad.
And then you just push it off the back of the truck onto the dry area, and then
Somebody picks it up with a.
Or
they use the loader that they've got and just push it. Yeah, I mean,
right. Well, it
Or
wouldn't be
you
that
could
hard to
put
create another area to back up with some other boxes for that type of material. I mean, you're putting a mound up there with some pavement on it.
what
and a
you would want to
guardrail.
do, you'd want to design it so that whenever you get rid of the bulk item, it lands on the tipping floor.
Right.
Because what you don't want to do is double handle it. You don't want to drop it into a box and then have to hook up to the box and haul the box 300 yards to dump the box. You want to be able to just touch it once with a piece of equipment. If you're the people operating the
Right.
tipping floor, that's where you get cost saving. That's where the efficiency comes in. But
But like you said, having to haul it is
Even just the
serious
fuel
money.
for the haul.
Do we take bulk items at all of the convenience center right now?
But you could, like he was saying, most of them too. You can't dump. Like if you pulled up or tried to back up, you can't dump it into the side. You got to push it over the top. And if you don't
It's
have
8-9 feet tall.
I think the one at Spot, it actually is open on one end, so that's.
Spot, there's a couple county, I believe Spot is, and I believe Knott's Island.
Grandy has the open
Yeah,
containers
the
with the
steel.
rear end open. You can drop it and push it up in
Yeah.
there.
it all depends how full it is.
Yeah.
So they'll leave it
And how
open.
busy it is too, the sites.
Once it starts filling up, they'll swing the door shut.
Usually it's electronics and steel.
Yeah.
That one's open and the tire.
But so, like I said, I mean,
$500,000 is a lot of money.
it is. I mean,
It
we're
is if we could do something to
For the
clean up
ground.
yeah, that's the issue.
I agree with
have.
Mike on that.
we are.
Well, you could build a steel grate.
Could, but right now it's nasty up there.
I
It's
know,
awful.
but you could do a steel grate where they
You'd have
could.
to have a great, yeah.
Yeah.
But you can't tip. But you can't tip. That's oh,
Owen said he would volunteer to go out there. And,
he'd be,
Well, I guess then why don't
be the squeegee
And we'll
guy.
get into once we get into the budget, you'll see why I recommend. It's not just because it saves money, but right now we're running in a loss in our solid waste, and it's because of the fact that we're hauling more loads.
We just went up on our fees
2 years ago, I think.
a couple
Yeah.
years ago we went.
But
It wasn't
we're-
much, though, was it? It's low.
it's
Yeah,
just
but
a couple dollars.
keeps
over.
creeping up and creeping up and creeping up.
Yeah, I mean, and it's because we're hauling more loads.
Well, and
compared to what-
I think part of the issue too is I see a lot of
400 grand 1 year.
like Virginia tags and other tags swinging in there with flatbeds and they're loading stuff up in those containers. I think contractors are coming in and emptying their stuff in containers where they shouldn't be either. I'm not sure they're being checked. Yeah, I don't think they're being checked like they need.
Well, so
Several
one-
years ago, I proposed we put a decal
Yep.
in the tax bill so that when they put in their window, when they pull into the sites,
That's what we used in Chesterfield.
yeah.
Yep.
I mean, but nobody wanted to do it.
And I wonder if we did that and
Parking
control that,
pass.
if it would reduce the cost some, because we may be getting a lot of
somebody's trash.
out of state trash
From
going in there,
Dare,
which is
from
killing
Chesapeake.
us.
Well, I know the one in Shawburg gets trash from down near Old Trap, people going to work,
Well,
but
then
they have
maybe we look at
Shawburg
something like that so
addresses.
we can monitor it, or
They
do
do.
something better to make sure it's.
So
not-
we did look into it, and it would be really easy to do like a window
Yeah.
cling, like a small one or a sticker that you put on your windshield that says this is your essentially your dump pass for.
And let's see if that
year.
reduces the cost. If it does, then we've taken a good step. And if it doesn't, then maybe we look at this next.
How many
step.
transfer
a lot.
stations do we have? 9?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Am I missing 2?
Mayock, Charborough, Barco,
Grandy,
Brandy,
House Point.
Did I miss Knott's Island?
Knott's Island,
Corona.
Corova,
What about
Gibbs Woods.
What about
Gibbs Woods.
Yeah.
It's 9. It's
9.
9. I thought it was 9.
But
I
I
shouldn't have
know
doubted you,
it,
Kevin.
most every county's got those little decals.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know of one that doesn't, because, yeah, I mean, people are disposing of waste that they're not having to pay for.
And we just
Start
tell
talking
waste management,
reaction
let's start looking for
time.
the decals. If
Yeah.
they don't have it, they can't dump.
So what you run into here, and I'm a fan of that, but just so you all are aware, the complaint that you will get is I've lived here for pick an amount of time, could be your whole life, and I went up there in a car that didn't have the decal, and they wouldn't let me throw my trash away. I've lived here 50 years.
And I just bought a new car,
Uh-huh.
and the decals on my own car.
Well, here's my driver's license that shows my residence.
Well, there you go.
That's a buy car.
Perfect example too. That there's a lot of people, like he said, maybe, and I'm not knocking somebody that lives in Camden, but they come from Shiloh or they come that way and they ride right by the Charborough to go to Virginia to go to work. I've seen it.
Peel in and chuck it.
Peel in and chuck it.
But like Bob said, here's my driver's license, shows my county address. Use that, but until you get your new decal from the county.
The other thing that I will say, just so you're aware, the monthly cost for hauling, for instance, like regular household trash, like in the compactor, is about $10,000 a month per for all of our sites. The average cost for bulk is $40,000. Just to kind of give you a point, bulk is where we see
That's where your money's.
the haul charges at. But yeah, we can try window
I think
clings
if
for a year.
If we did something to verify that there's a county resident, you'd probably see savings because, like Kevin said, people coming through Scarborough.
that much.
Huh?
It's surprised. You'd be surprised.
No, but I mean, if
We can still do it though. I mean,
do it.
There's a lot
I
of
think-
people that come over that bridge. I've seen the truckloads coming across.
And the thing that you can do, if the attendant doesn't want to confront an individual, take the license number.
And give it to Kevin.
oh no,
And
we
multiple times
what
we've
we
had to
would do
go
is
there.
require the attendant to confront people because
It doesn't go well.
I mean, we're going to have to because if you say we're going to get their tag number, well, they live in another county, so are we going to have a?
Or their son drove their car.
Paying waste management. To
You just
man the
write a
site, so we can
letter,
tell them what to
you
do.
observe dumping at X site. Please do not.
So we don't have any solid waste staff. So if this is happening in large quantities, we start to run into some staffing. I mean, but the initial thing is just not let them dump. I mean, the attendants. I mean, that's part of the. They're supposed. The whole reason we have attendants at these sites
Is to
enforce certain rules and protocols. I mean, otherwise we don't need attendants, and people can just throw away whatever they want
So
to.
now is making sure they dump the stuff in the right bin. They're not asking them if the residents are.
Right now they're not. But if we gave them a decal and we, I think that's something that they would do. I don't think that'll be an issue.
Or give them
But
something
there
to hang.
are ugly
would you-
people, and you drive up. I know in Scarborough, my neighbor is the site court. Well, runs the site, and she's a lady. And somebody would go up and say, "Yeah, I live here. I'm going to dump it anyway."
Oh, yeah, they
it
do.
could get kind of mean, like Kevin said.
I mean, yeah, they do. I mean, I've been there, but that's kind of part of the.
Yeah, Milton
Get them a
was
taser.
confronted some people and they threatened
So
to beat
Ben,
him.
would you remove
Yeah.
all bulk? So it would just go down to household. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, you would just the bulk. So what I would recommend is take the bulk from the mainland sites, not Gibbs Woods, not Knott's Island, not Corova, because that's that's a long
can't.
way to drive.
But no, so all your tires have to go there. All your
Just
everything.
bulk.
Okay.
The 40,000 is just the bulk box. It's not
Okay.
anything else. So you'd still do tires where you can. Electronics wouldn't change. White goods wouldn't. I mean, The only thing that would
Just
change
that,
would
that
be the bulk.
sofa, all that big stuff.
Construction lumber, concrete, all that.
Well,
crap.
technically, that stuff's not supposed to be.
Supposed to be there anyway.
Yeah,
It's going in.
It's going in.
It's going there.
in,
it's
man.
supposed to be going to the tipping floor anyway.
Well, that's what my point is it's not being monitored. So that's where you're getting a lot of.
Well, some of the sites, like in the defense of the attendees, like, Miss Kitty's neighbor. I mean, some of the sites, some of those things, it's like a
they're busy.
a factory, man. It's packed.
Yeah.
I mean, especially at times in the morning when they're going to work or they're coming home. It's just like they're
Grandy's
it's
busy.
rolling.
Grandy
all the time,
rolls,
man.
Charborough, and Mayock.
I came by Mayock the other day, and there was 6 cars in the turn lane on Tulse Creek Road, and they
Waiting to go in
yeah,
before it
and they
opened.
were backed on Tulse
We're
Creek
gonna
Road.
expand that.
But
at
I
some
would
point,
tell you,
so.
Ben, people are coming up from in their trailer in open bed trailers with construction lumber, concrete,
And they're
it's
not
being-
supposed to have trailers in there.
Well, they're
at
dumping
all.
it in the open bins in there.
Well, like I said, we can talk about enforcement. We can do window clings if you guys want to try that for a year, and but we do have to do a rate study because we are losing money. I think we've got our budget up now.
I would like to see us then try to get some control over what's going in there.
Okay.
Too, and let's see how that does.
Do the decals.
The decals are really. I mean, we already mail tax bills. You just mail it out with the tax
Make
bill.
them enforce if it's construction stuff that it goes up to the Maple site.
Okay. All right.
Because they give you too, like if you go, like if Mike tore down a shed in his backyard, I don't know if people know that. They give you what? If you're a resident, they give you 500 pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
The first
residential
500 is
stuff.
free for residential. So if you just
Yeah.
have a truckload of stuff,
Yeah, it's not the tipping. Well, the tipping fees. We'll talk about that too. But the haul. I mean, we're spending, like I said, I mean, almost $500,000 hauling bulk boxes every year.
much.
So
Well, let's
Is
try to
it
get under
possible that
control.
we could close some bulk? I mean, like if you closed all but say Moyock and either Grandy or Powell's Point, one for the southern end, one for the northern end, you could would it reduce it a lot to close
most
most of them?
In my opinion, you'd see people. There'd be a line, and some people would take it to the tipping floor because it's close. It depends where you're at, and some people are going to say, "Well, I'm still going to go there." So I don't know. If you left Moyock open, it probably wouldn't reduce it all that much.
And I don't
Yeah,
think
if
Grandy
you-
could just.
Just close them all. Make
You
them
would
take-
lose. You would only lose
There you
3.
go. Especially Mike
Spot,
dumping off those old
Currituck, and
refrigerators,
Shaw.
Yeah.
refrigeration stuff.
Dig a hole in
HVAC.
the-
Yeah. So, but I mean, the bulk of it's coming out of Moyock because of that's where our population density is on the mainland. So,
I wonder how much construction out of Moab is going in there.
Oh, wow.
that's a good. I mean, I will say I see roll-off boxes in the major neighborhoods. You know, the ones that are, I'll say kind of tract homes. They definitely have roll-off boxes in those neighborhoods.
Okay.
But the one-off house, I don't know that they have a dumpster there. So,
Well, they built 2 houses in between Sligo and 3 between Sligo and Shawboro, and each one of them had a box there.
Yeah, they always do.
so.
I love to see people dumping in those.
And the other side effect you could see if you quit taking bulk at the convenience sites, and this would happen for a little bit, and we'd have to enforce it, but you would start to see some people who would just dump stuff wherever,
Right.
In front of the gate and leave, get mad. Yeah.
or just
Happens-
the end of a dead end road.
On Spot Road, if people go to that convenience site, on a holiday and it's closed, they go to the other end of Spot Road where there's, roads, and they just dump them right there on the road.
Yeah, it's
They do it in Moyock too, and I cut the trash open. I put some gloves on, and I go to somebody's
some
house
mail.
in the cop car.
I hope you find them.
Illegal dumping.
Good.
So we'll go through the actual operating budget for the solid waste fund. Once again, this is an enterprise fund, so all the money that gets spent here is generated in there. Can you highlight that blue?
Oh, yeah.
So, as you go through, you'll see that administration stays roughly the same. Operations, you're going to see a pretty, $500,000 increase. The bulk of that is increase in contracted services collection, and it is coming. Some of it is just annual increases. There's a 2.5% increase, but a lot of it are haul rates. We're hauling a lot more waste than we've hauled in the past. And so that's, go back up to revenues real quick. So you can see that expenditures have gone up roughly $400,000. If you come up here, you'll see that our revenues, especially if you look at the revised budget, are going to hold about the same. Now, we've underestimated revenues a little bit. We've got more homes now, so that'll be a little bit up, but we are not going to see $400,000 increase next year. So I talked about a rate study. I think that's important. We can do some more enforcement at the sites, do some kind of decal window cling, so that we can make sure that people who are visiting our convenience sites are in Currituck. The other recommendation right now, our tipping fee is actually lower than what it cost us to get rid of it. So when people come in with commercial waste at transfer station, we are actually charging less than Albemarle Regional Landfill charges us.
That
So
shouldn't be the case.
my recommendation, so that we just set it once for a few years and kind of leave it, is to set our tipping fee at $10 over, the tipping fee for county residents at $10 over the Albemarle regional fee, and for out-of-county folks who come to the transfer station, it's set at $20 over. So that way there's, basically it gives you, somewhere between 3 to 7 years of that tipping fee shouldn't go up that much unless something crazy happens. So that way you don't have to adjust that every year. But you've got to at least go up to what the tipping fee they charge us is, but I'd recommend going a little above.
And a resident still gets the 500
They
pounds.
would. Okay. It's basically commercial waste.
Yeah, okay.
So.
But they build into the project.
Yeah.
By the time you add the fuel charge, that makes it $90 and $100, basically.
And it's 70.
77 something, I think.
Yeah, I think it's 77.50 maybe.
Yeah, it's right at, it's just under $80.
So it'd be $13 a ton increase.
Yeah, that's.
So if you'll go down now to, keep going down. Let's talk about capital outlay on solid waste real quick.
Good Lord.
The capital outlay is there, and I'm going to pull up Munis so that I can talk through.
10,000 to 190.
Well, that's not unusual in capital outlay will fluctuate wildly from year to year because it's a one-off cost.
Yeah. Project.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay.
You logged out of Munis, Sandra.
Is that finally paving the convenience sites so we don't have to
I
hear
think
about-
there's two. I think that paves.
Okay. All right.
I think that's two. But I'm going to pull it up so I can go over exactly what it is because I don't want to say something and it come back to get me in trouble. And so you won't be able to see what I'm going to pull up on the screen, but I'll go over it. So it's upgrading two of the recycling site offices.
Which
So-
ones are those?
It doesn't have in here which ones it are. There's just two of them that need repairs according to DEQ. It is concreting three of the sites. So, and fixing a culvert at Shawboro. If you guys want to pick which three, that's fine. But obviously, Moyock gets a lot of traffic. But now we're going to expand Moyock, so I don't know if you want to pave it. Grandy gets a lot of traffic.
Shopper.
And I would recommend Shawboro because it was the Shawboro Ruritans
Which
that
who brought it before.
pushed that forward. But that also fixes a culvert at Shawboro. That's $150,000 of the cost that's in there. So.
And that's for the culvert and the paving at
Mm-hmm.
Shawboro.
And then $20,000 for repairs to the transfer station, roof and walls, and just general maintenance. So $40,000 of other capital, $150,000 for paving and fixing the culvert.
Do we have any control over the hours? It bothers me that in the wintertime, they're open to 7 o'clock from, it gets dark at 5:30. There's hardly anybody going in there.
I mean,
Now, in the summertime, I can see keeping it open till 7.
well, you guys have total control over the hours.
Grandy is 7 o'clock. You still got people flowing in at Grandy at night.
In the
wintertime.
winter
Oh,
time?
yeah. Even
Not
myself. Oh, I'll go there right before like 5 minutes to 7. Hurry up, and there's cars in
Make
there.
a meeting
Now,
then.
Pastor Tank closes
You
one
know, I've
day a
never.
week.
Grandy's busy year round.
They skip like a Tuesday.
Yeah. And it really, I mean, there's all kinds of levers we can pull to try to find. I mean, that would give some cost savings, you know. It would say 52 days a year of staffing.
Down for 1 day a week, you said?
But I think you'll have
Anarchy.
No, I wouldn't want to.
a lot of angry people about that too, probably.
Yeah.
No,
People
no,
get really upset about their convenience sites, not just here, but in general everywhere.
The only concern I've got about paving is with the weight of the trucks going in there, how long is that pavement
That's
going to
what,
last?
he's looking at concrete, not actual pavement. I think
Yeah, looking at concrete.
Yeah, concrete will take it.
If you put in the right concrete, it'll last. And it's not the weight of the trucks that worries me. It's the roll-off boxes coming off of the trucks. That's where you bust your concrete up. But if you spec it right, it'll hold up.
Right. Well, they have, the concrete pads they're sitting on now, I think they even have a guide with a roller, right? That's-
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I mean, and most of the places are already, like you said, where the boxes are at are already paved. It's it's just paving around some of the box. And
Just for giving people a stepping off point,
Yeah.
so they're not stepping in the mud and the slime.
But and this is something that people maybe don't think about, but paving it doesn't mean it's not slimy. Like,
Right.
I meant that was stepping in a mud puddle.
With the hole in it.
Not
I meant stepping in a mud puddle.
it won't be muddy,
Yeah.
but you'll be stepping in.
Get out some places.
Go over your loafers now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be low.
I wonder if you use
That
some
don't go
of
up to
this
the
milled
dump station,
asphalt
then
and
it's
taking off of
That's
this.
awful. You
this
been-
That turns
dirt.
into a nightmare.
It'll now that the trucks will tear it all to pieces.
Yeah, it'll just
But
push
if you're
up
just
and-
talking a pad on either side of where the
I think
that won't work. That
I mean, we
stuff's
could try
uneven.
milled asphalt at one of the other ones and just see how it holds up. But I've been around a lot of convenience sites.
Oh,
And
don't do asphalt. Don't.
yeah, concrete.
I'm talking
is-
about milled asphalt.
It'll just pothole up. It'll just push out when they turn, just like the gravel. It's just It's just like it is gravel with tar in it. So it's
Yeah,
just
my experience is you got to use some pretty high strength concrete, and
Yeah.
but
What you're going to run into is you're going to have to undercut and get the where you're going to put this lower than what the dumpster's sitting now, so it'll drain. If not, it's going to be right there.
yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean that's all part of the equation is figuring out how you get positive drainage because those compactor boxes where we put our household trash, every time you pack those, it squeezes juice.
It needs a French drain beside it.
But that's what it does. So yeah.
The dirt's better.
Well, we've got it in the budget, so
Okay, we can explore
so
You'd
that.
have to put a
Dirt.
drain. You'd have to put like a grate on either side to where when it runs out, it would run into a trough.
you don't want to start trenching leachate.
Nope.
I'm talking about
Let's move on.
You build a concrete
Yeah.
trough.
Let's let somebody else figure out how to make it work.
Yeah.
That's their problem.
But anyway, so that
There, okay.
but then as we go down a little bit further, so
Exactly.
now you'll see that the issue is that if you look at your revenues over or under expenditures, you've got the general fund has always subsidized solid. Well, I shouldn't say always, but for a long time has subsidized solid waste by $1.2 million. It just has, and that maybe Sandra knows the history of that, but I don't know the history of that.
Back in the day, 30 years ago, there was a solid waste tax. It was 2 cents a tax at some point back in time. Back in 2009, in the last recession, the number dropped to 1.2, and it's kind of been there. But we stopped a solid waste tax, and it's all general fund tax that gets transferred, and that
in
was.
2009 or so, you said we stopped the tax.
No, the tax stopped probably 20 years ago. In 2009, the transfer used to be like 1.6, At that point in 2009 is when the recession was, and we were cutting everything like we are now, kinda. And at that point, it dropped to 1.2. The rates between the fee that goes on your tax bill and the tipping fees, they were kind of carrying themselves, so the 1.2 was okay. In the last 3 years or so, that number has not been able to keep up with the expenses.
Okay.
So what you see here is essentially it's $900,000 short of paying for itself. So we're talking about taking $900,000 out of the fund balance in order to balance the budget. Keep in mind, there is no cost cutting here. I mean, other than operational changes, because there's no positions to cut.
Right. It's a contract. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. So the only way to offset that is to either change operationally what you're doing, so that you cut cost, or increase the revenues.
Which you would have to basically be about a 2-cent tax, right? I mean, you're talking almost $1 million. 2 pennies is worth just over $1 million, right?
Yeah. So we, but in this case, it wouldn't be a tax. It would be.
Well, it'd be a fee.
It'd be the fee.
$200,000 some dollars, because a penny generates $623,932.
But if we find some savings in monitoring what goes into the sites too, that could help.
It could help.
We won't see that for a year, though.
Could start helping.
Right.
And so that's the reason that
Almost $1 million.
That's how much a penny
$627,204.
That's what?
627.
How much 1 penny of tax generates for next year's budget?
How much?
$627,204.
Yeah, because currently it's 623.
So, we can pull that out of fund balance next year for solid waste without having to, because solid waste doesn't have a lot of liabilities with it. It's just the year-to-year contract cost. You know, you don't have insurance and some other stuff that's out there.
Right.
But we're going to do a rate study here as well, and they're going to come back with a recommendation on what the household fee should be for Mainland and the Outer Banks to be able to pay for
solid waste.
Yeah.
Well, then I would say let's get our numbers more accurate before we do that study. Like, let's make it sure it's just county residents dumping.
So the only concern with that is if you put the study off until FY22,
Yeah.
then
They need to coincide.
yeah, I mean, now we can estimate it, you know, and as we do the rate study, we can plug in, once they do the rate study, they're basically going to create a formula, and we can plug in a new number in the formula to say this is what the cost actually is. But
Right.
I think you can do them together so that if you see cost savings.
Yeah, you can adjust down if
Yeah.
you need to.
Okay,
Right.
but
But I would do the rate study next year. I think we need it in all of our enterprise funds.
Yeah. We do.
Because what's the fund balance in solid waste right now? Actually, you know what? I think I can.
But see, the solid waste is, with water and sewage though, it's based on usage. And then, and solid waste though, it's based on how many times they gotta dump it.
Well,
And then you have no control of who's, filling it up.
Yeah, so the way that, in theory, the way solid waste works is you figure out roughly how many tons of garbage each household generates, how much it costs to collect that garbage, haul that garbage, and bury that garbage, and then that's your fee, per house. And then commercial pays its own way by going over the scales. But, and that is going to be a challenge even with window clings or and small companies who,
Yeah.
I mean, so a good example would be
Quartz Landscaping.
a landscaping company. I won't say McCord's, but yeah, I mean, do they bring brush in and throw it away in Grandy? Because technically they should pay for that.
I don't do that.
They
don't let me throw my kitchen trash away.
My job scraps get take up to and that's why I know it's nasty up there. Good Lord.
But I know for a fact, because it happens everywhere, that there are small businesses who
Sure.
They're taking trailer. I see the landscape
Yeah.
trailers in the way, and I mean, like you said, it's a guy with no sticker on the truck that
Shouldn't be doing.
they shouldn't be doing. I don't think trailers should be allowed in.
So that's the enforcement part that's really hard for the attendants. So I pull up with a truck, and I get ready to throw stuff away. Is it business or is it personal? And how do they tell that unless I'm in a?
If you're not bringing a trailer in, Kevin has a good point. It's a pickup load. It's another
pickup
it's-
load is not
right. And one of the things that always the attendant almost needs to be on the road end, not in turn. Like you need a someone. We had a scale up in Chesterfield where you came up to the scale. You had a attendant, just like we do at Maple, but it was at every recycle center
Yeah.
that you came to. And so if the person's outside of the fence and says, "Oh no, you got to take that to Maple," they don't even get to come in and get out of their car. And I realize that's a bigger thing, but if you put a toll booth basically right there and you come in and say, you got a trailer, sorry, you got to go, or whatever, turn it around.
Yeah, because by the time they get out of the truck and they're starting to dump stuff, and then you
Right,
stop them.
right. Or the attendant's back over there dealing with something over
Somebody
there.
else.
Right.
And that's a good point, Bob.
It happens.
All the time. All the time.
Maybe we can come up. There's got to be some way to
And we
regulate
can,
it
and that will.
efficiently.
Owen's
that will
got some
cut
free time.
That will cut some costs. The
Once he's
question.
done putting stuff in the
Well,
ground.
County
keep
Currituck's
thinking
growing,
that.
and we're getting people coming through all the time to the Shawboro sites in Grandy with. I don't think you're right. I think it's likely to be legal.
So we can do that. So just so you know, the fund balance in solid waste is 3.7 at the end of last fiscal year.
Oh, that's
So we'll, a couple more
Sorry,
years and we
today.
burn through that.
That's a negative, you said. What
Well,
is
it shows as negative, but the way that it works, that's a good number.
I can't-
negative's
okay,
good
I can't
there.
see that up there. Okay.
It's 3,710,600 and
Okay.
So if we keep pulling from that to prop this up in 3 years, roughly, we're
Thank you.
yeah.
You're at a rate increase then.
Okay,
Yeah, so
thank you.
like I said, we
just
can
wanna
go
maintain some fund balance.
1 year. We're fine, right? I'm comfortable with even pulling 900,000 out. 1 year, I'm comfortable with. I would not want to pull out the next year. So the next year, we've got to find a way to get in the
Okay.
black on solid waste.
So to try to do that, we're going to do the decal,
We'll do the decal.
rate study.
We'll do the rate study, and then we will also see about some other minor operational changes, maybe moving where the attendants are based at in the facilities.
Yeah.
Some of that might be a little more. Some facilities it'll be easy. Some of them might not have the room to do that. And really, to be honest with you, and as we get into the year a little bit, we can always talk about some of the other operational changes. Whether that's we get to December and we see if it's made a difference having a decal, for instance. And then at that point, we're talking about, okay, what didn't make the impact we thought it would have. Now do we start talking about bulk boxes? Do we start talking about, no trailers at the sites?
I would say no trailers at the site because, like I said, that's where it's manipulated, and you could have, just like you said, using landscaping, you could have some guy with no stickers on his trailer or his truck. He can come in there, and if he's a Currituck resident, he can dump.
Yeah.
But you have a guy with a logoed truck or
Yep.
whatever, and I mean, you're not supposed to go there.
So here's one for you. Thinking about it, Kevin, I just pulled up my whole split rail fence around my yard. I'm going to put it in my trailer and take it to Corova. I can't fit it on my bed of my truck, so I'm going to use it. So it's a perfectly legitimate use.
Yeah.
It's a catch-22, I guess.
Is it going to be over 500 pounds?
No.
Okay. I mean, because if you did that, it's over 500 pounds.
Yeah.
Technically, you're over what the
Right,
tipping
right.
fee is anyways.
Right, yeah,
up
but I mean, it's 30 sticks of, whatever. It's just a split rail fence.
there.
but-
What if you picked up a chain link fence and threw it in the back?
Right. Well, then you scrap metal and it goes in the scrap metal.
You hope so.
It'll be over 500.
Yeah.
Right.
So you
Yeah.
need somebody up there who's going to
Well,
enforce and monitor.
And so this is more for my clarification point, because I want to make sure I understand where the board's at. My understanding of the rule is you get the first 500 pounds for free if you're residential,
County
and after
resident.
that you pay.
yes.
And then you pay after 500.
Yeah, and then all commercial has to pay. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
all commercial pays.
I just want to make sure that we're all, that I understand it.
But even that, I mean, you can see there's guys coming in there with pickup truckloads of stuff, and it's way over 500.
Well, and the
It
attendance.
is.
Yeah,
It is.
that's pretty routine for
Yeah,
sites.
I can tell you the weight limit is not something that I've ever seen. What I have seen other places do is they basically will ban construction and demolition debris at the convenience sites, because that's typically the weight, when you're talking about heavy weights, it's that kind of stuff. That has to go to the tipping floor or has to go to the transfer station.
Ben,
Somebody cuts down a tree or something like that. That's where we talked about the hurricane debris of pulling it to the side of the road. They cut down a oak tree. It's got some weight to it, and throw it even in the back of a pickup or a small 5x8 trailer. You got some weight.
Yeah.
Thousands of pounds that you can go throw,
Well, and that goes back to attendance there, because I have seen people pulling up in their pickup trucks and dumping big
Full of
chunks of
stuff.
concrete, bricks from tearing stuff up, and it shouldn't be going in there.
It's, and I'm not going to say our attendants are that. When I say our attendants, the contractor. Let me be very clear about that. Contracted employees, but weight's a hard thing to just judge.
Right.
I mean,
Construction debris is not.
it's not. That's a very clear. So, like I said, I've seen
come in
people,
there with a truck full of crepe myrtle tree limbs, and they're light as all get out. You could have
yeah,
tons of them.
yeah. But so, like that's why I said I've never really seen a weight thing before. I've seen where certain kinds of debris can't go to
If
a
somebody
convenience
tears
site.
down an old deck and's got the old post and the big decking, they probably should take that up to the Maple site.
But I do think it's hard for the. I mean, most attendants maybe could figure out that that's more than 500 pounds, but you're going to have. Like I said, I mean, it's
That's up to the contractor to make sure that people are trained
Well,
and know what they're doing.
What's the incentive for them, right? Because they get paid to haul. So the more they haul, the more they make. So
no,
there's
and
incentive
that's not a
to-
contract we can shop around a whole lot because there's
right,
not a lot
only
of
one
companies that
person
do
can
that kind
it,
of.
Right.
Well, I think a lot of it's getting the information out. I mean, I might think that it's okay to go put whatever in
See
the dump
everybody
site.
else do what you're going to do it too.
So I think if you're going to change anything and ask people to start taking their stuff to different places and all this, you need to get information out to the public.
Well, I think the first thing would be what changes do we want to make? And what I'm hearing right now is there's not a whole lot of changes we want to make other than enforcing the rules we already have.
Well, let's make sure they're Currituck citizens with the decals.
With the
or something-
window
something,
cling.
Yeah.
And say they got a new car, they have their driver's license that says I live on Tolls Creek Road, whatever, or
Well,
Grandy Road.
You can typically you give some of the decals to the attendants at the stations, and then when somebody has a driver's license, they give them a decal. So that way,
Right,
Make-
you're not
make
dealing
some
with
money
right.
on the side.
but that's the
Right. Full side hustle.
yeah. So
But the
window
attendees
clings-
and the attendees' defense too, though, like the Mayock one, like Owen said too, and I've seen it when I've in the cop car. There's 8 cars on Sunday right before it opens, just piled up, and it looks like they're going shopping instead of taking trash. So I mean, there's days when somebody's saying, "Do I put this here or do I put this there?" And that one attendee's dealing with that person here, as big as that yard is.
Oh, they're not
somebody
going to catch
slips in.
everything.
It happens.
Yeah, I
it
mean,
happens all the
that-
time,
yeah, that's nobody's going to be perfect.
especially in
So I guess
Grandy
it sounds
and
like
Mayock.
the start. Let's start with some.
Start
kind
with
of
the
a-
window clings and
and make
doing
sure
some.
they enforcement that the rules are.
And then, do we actually understand what construction debris is?
Well, that's
So
not a
that's-
rule here, I don't think, is it? I mean, you can bring construction and demolition into
So
a
what
convenience
does
site.
that look like? Because
As
like
long
I
as
said,
it's not commercial.
I just took the fence down, right? It was rotted in half of it, so I'm throwing the whole thing away. Is that construction debris? Or
That's
if I-
construction / demolition, so that would be demolition.
Right. So I'm supposed to drive all the way from Crow around to Maple.
Well, I think that's where Corovan, Knott's Island, and Gibbs Woods are
Right. Well,
are
I'm
different animals. But if you were in Moyock, then yes, you would say you've got to drive to.
Well, if you do that, you're going to see your haul fees go way down. I mean, I would venture to say a big chunk of.
Oh,
I mean,
probably
every day you go in there,
300,
somebody's
400,000.
torn up a back stoop on their house and replaced it. And it may not be a whole lot. It's maybe 150 pounds.
You got an extra 15-minute drive to get to the.
Well, like I said, the bulk. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, if we move the bulk box, because most people aren't throwing construction demolition debris in the compactor boxes, they're
No.
putting them in the bulk boxes. So that's why I was saying from kind of the first idea was move the bulk boxes, get rid of those, and make them go to the transfer station.
Which in effect you're doing if you enforce the rule, if you put a rule in place, I guess, that we won't take construction debris, and that includes then your bulk boxes don't need to be there in the first place.
Or
You're not
signage.
Take them out.
You've already eliminated the need for the bulk box.
I mean, so if you took the bulk boxes out, we could add $30,000 even
Back
to
to-
capital outlay.
Go back to the nasty tipping floor, though.
But you can add $30,000 into capital outlay and figure out a way to get a place where people can push trash off, where they can still come with a loader and scrape it without that being the place where you throw household waste.
Right.
You know, and maybe it is a ramp. It's just a simple ramp that you back up to with a guardrail, and then you throw it over, and then it drops onto the tipping floor. I mean, there's a lot of ways to make that work, but
I think that's worthy of looking at. How does that work? You know, given what Maple looks like, right? Where does it go? How do you do it? All that stuff. Because right now you just pull up with your scrap metal and you throw it on the ground, and they push it up onto a pile.
because essentially essentially half of the overage that you've got there, you can cut by stopping bulk boxes.
Bulk boxes are the problem. I'm just going to tell you.
That's why I said get rid of
Oh
them.
yeah. I mean, it's going to make some people mad, but like you said, I mean,
Fred's not going to be happy with you making him go over there to.
What would you?
Your husband's not going to be happy with you making him get on the tipping floor.
Well, even if we,
Don't have any.
okay, even if we did away with the bulk boxes, don't you think it's still beneficial to make sure just residents are using?
Oh,
them?
oh yeah, it's a combination
That's
of both.
I think both of those have to happen. I mean, but yeah, if you get it down to mostly residential trash, for the few that get in to dump some residential trash off, like I said, it's 10,000.
One, yeah, I mean, yeah, there's.
Yeah, $30,000 a month is $360,000 a year.
And that's a $400,000 savings.
Yeah,
Roughly, yeah. I mean, so the it's $40,000 a month to haul bulk boxes.
$500,000 a year.
So and I figured, you know, 80,000 of that is the bulk boxes they haul out of Currituck and Knott's Island, because you don't have that much bulk come out of those areas.
Yeah.
Moyock and Grandy are your two big.
And with that saving, you can make a mighty nice place to drive up.
Can make a
push
nice
it up.
hill.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this, then
First
maybe
class.
somebody knows this then. What is your average household? How many trips would they have for bulk items? Once a month, maybe? Once every 2 weeks?
No, it's not once a month for the average household.
Maybe once a year, maybe? Or
Yeah, I mean, you think about. I mean, you're talking. I mean, I don't know the average. I don't know. I mean, I can say for myself, probably once every 3 months, I take something bulk.
Okay, well, that
don't
being
have
said,
any.
too, then, that goes in that these bulks are being filled up somewhere else, then.
Or they're being filled up with commercial.
Yeah, that's my
A
point.
lot
I
of them are
think
being
that's what
filled
you're
up with
seeing.
commercial.
Right.
So it's not really home. I mean, homeowners use it some, but
Yeah, when you'll see the homeowner come in, they throw a lamp away, they throw an end table away, or something.
Yeah,
It's not
a
really-
couple chairs and
Yeah.
stuff, yeah.
To go all the way to Maple for that, would have?
Well,
If you do
we
away with
the
the
dumpsters,
bulk boxes,
you won't,
you
we
would.
would, yes.
That's my concern. If
That's
you,
what I'm getting at.
if you do away with the bulk boxes, and I'm just going by the one that I know down in Powell's Point on Spot Road, I
they
just
throw 'em-
worry that instead of people taking their sofa or their lamp or end table
They throw it on the side
to
of the road.
Powell's Point, they get to Spot and they say, I'm sorry, you can't do that. You're going to have to drive all the way up to Maple, which is, 30 miles. They're going to go back down Spot Road, pull down one of those side roads, and push it out.
Could
And I
you
know
just
that's
say
what- that's what's
household bulk items and not construction and all that?
well, you could once again you could come back and say that there's no construction and demolition.
If you get away construction demo,
Demolition.
leave the bulk box. Maybe you drop the bulk box.
We can try that.
considerably at that point.
Yeah,
might
because
shave
if you
it
just
in
say
half.
bulk box for household bulk items,
What's easier to say is just no construction demolition.
Okay.
yeah,
Well, there-
okay,
that-
there you go. Because then that
Gives you
way it
halfway
still
there.
gives you, it still
That's
gives
halfway
you.
there easily. Or
Because if
better.
somebody has a chair and they got a car and they just want to put the chair in the back of their trunk and I mean, I hate to see that go.
So
away.
we're gonna
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Phil, I'm thinking about the old
So do you
lady
got?
out there.
we're gonna starting at the start of the fiscal year, because that gives us some time to message a little bit.
And get some
Construction
decals made.
C&D is what it's called. C&D will go to the transfer. All C&D will go to the transfer station, except in Currituck, Knott's Island, and Gibbs Woods.
Okay.
So on the mainland, it has to go to the transfer station.
demolition.
And we're
And we
doing all
put
this
out-
to save the taxpayers some money.
Yeah, you put out why we're doing it.
And it's to minimize. There still will be a rate increase from the rate study, I think, but this will minimize
Right.
that rate increase.
And you're doing the
Everybody get
decal
Still get the
system.
500 pounds.
And we'll do the window clean.
Yes, they'll still be able to tip it for free for the amount.
Right.
See more bonfires around it.
Let's get some little booties
Putting on-
put on out there with the
Decent-
burn up
Permits will
there.
go up.
Yeah. See some pretty colors in there too as the chemicals burn off.
Okay.
So, all right, and then we'll add. So, if we're just doing construct, okay. So let me ask this then: if it's just construction and C&D that's going to the transfer station, Are we still wanting to try to build something so that it's cleaner to get rid of that waste?
I think so.
Up at the Maple site?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Then we need to
I think
probably
so.
Gosh,
add,
yes.
add 50,000 into capital outlay.
Because, I mean, that's why I
we'll
hate
re-
going up there, is because I know what I got to step in.
Yeah, and we'll reduce our haul rate
I'm serious.
by
I
an
hate
equal
that.
amount, because I know we'll see at least that much savings. I mean,
$1,000 saving on the
yeah,
whole.
we'll only put in whatever we're going to put in capital outlay, but any other savings we see stays in this fund, and that'll give us a.
Please, yeah, let's
Add
do that. I'd be
Okay.
Put it back
happy
in
for that.
to the fund reserve. Okay. I think this is the most lively discussion we've ever had on this subject. 3 years I've been here, I don't know that we've ever
Talk
talked about it at
trash.
all.
I just want Mike to have clean shoes.
All
Exactly.
the stink.
That or we'll hand out little slippies when people
Right.
get out of their car.
Damn.
So that that finishes utilities, right? Enterprise
Good
funds are done.
discussions.
So we will do watersheds real quick.
Okay.
And we're going to go through these really fast because by and large it's the same. Once again, there's no staff. It's the same kind of stuff. So this is Guinea Mill. We have done a project on Guinea Mill this year in the Guinea Mill district. Or actually, I think it's started now, but it's been lit. But you can see that, I mean, it's a district tax, so the revenue is going to stay pretty much the same. The expenditures, we just always budget basically. We budget the entire revenue so that if we need to spend it, we can.
Okay.
So, but that one takes in roughly $46,000. That's the one that we expanded
Yeah.
last year. Ald Bridge Ditch takes in $1,955. They are going to be doing some work in around that area though with some Dorian relief money. There's other ditches that'll be cleaned as well, but that's going to start pretty soon. Moyock Watershed, we've done a little bit of work this year around there, but I mean, as you can see, the
Water down the stream. What's the people out?
it brings in $19,000, and we budget, approximately the same amount to go out each year. Northwest Watershed, I actually, other than budget, I never talk about this one, which is really interesting. But it brings in $3,100. We've got some fund balance there, so if there was a project that needed to be done, we could do it. But I think that's how that one works. I think we save money for about 10 to 15 years, and then we do a
Heard
project.
money issues up that way, have you?
I think it's essentially just,
Clean out once in a while.
yeah, I mean, it cleans out, 3 houses. 3 houses are on it, so. But,
Okay.
Clean your culverts every
and Ocean Sands, Crown Point. This is, we're going to leave the tax rate where it is. There's,
They want to build a war chest, right?
yep. So
Okay.
we always budget to spend the money because at some point we hope to be able to. But you'll see it's budgeted in contingency here, so we'd have to move it from contingency to a project if we get the ability to do a project. And this is the wellhead. This one is a little more complicated. They actually, if you can scroll down to the fund balance portion. They have got enough money to do a project at this point, which is the phase 5. I get the phase numbers mixed up on this one because there's been so many, but so that one that project will probably happen next year, and then what they would look at is then building up some more money to do that last phase of the project that they want to do. This one actually has a pretty robust expenditure line, though, if you'll go back up real quick. You'll see that actually this one for operating expenditures has, a little under, when you take capital outlay out, a little under capital outlay and contingency, it's around $150,000 of annual operating expense, but that's because this is the one with all the pump systems, so there's a lot in repairs and maintenance. You're constantly servicing the pumps or replacing pumps, that kind of thing.
This one does have debt, and that's what this transfer to the
Yeah.
operating fund is.
You said, would you say debt?
Debt.
Yeah, for the original install.
Yeah. And we're on this, we've paid off one of the debts. This is the second one that we're still paying on.
But that's been positive. I mean, that's been working.
It pays its, yeah, I mean,
Oh, it works. It's amazing.
yeah.
Unless you have a rainstorm come through on Saturday after the hurricane.
So this is it's is technically, I guess the next one's technically, it's not a watershed fund, it's technically an enterprise fund, but this is for the curbside trash pickup in Wellhead. But it generates enough to pick up. So, or this is the roll in, roll out.
Yeah, this is a rollout service.
Which this one, I'll just be upfront with you. This one's funny to me that it's a tax district. I mean, I guess it's that there's the homeowners association there isn't real strong.
It's a voluntary homeowner.
So this is the only way to kind of force people to have that service.
Yeah, they wouldn't. It's so heavily touristed, they wouldn't roll the cans out,
Yeah.
and so you had a trash problem. So
Yeah.
we just had to have it.
But this one just pays for that service. That's all it does. Generates enough revenue to do that. So, so that's kind of it on watersheds and the roll in, roll out. If you want, we can talk about fire equipment funding.
Before we jump into that, why don't we just take a 5?
Take a break?
Yep.
All right.
All right, Ben.
All right, so for this, there's not actually something on the screen to look at. We're going to go through the fire department budgets. These are handouts. The FIAB recommended a change to the way that the fire departments do their budget, so that you're going to see a similar format as we go through these. We're just going to work through them from Moyoc and then around up to Corova. And so just talking through the budgets, and just if you have any questions, I can get answers before we present the budget. And then really probably looking at the capital spends on these. I mean, that's really, the operational spends don't change much year to year. It's really the capital where you're going to see changes. So we'll start with Moyoc. Capital outlay is to refinish. It's pretty minimal cost. Refinishing a bay floor, replacing some pagers, and a minor kitchen upgrade.
You're at where now?
He's a mayor
Capital
outlay,
Okay, now
page
second
2.
page, okay.
At the bottom.
And you see, there's a reduction in the budget for fire services. The bulk of that is because of the fact that, we purchased a piece of apparatus mid-year, and so that's why you see a reduction. So no other major spends in Moyoc. Turnout gear, but that's pretty common. You're going to see that in all the fire budgets.
Now, the turnout gear, my understanding, was supposed to fall out under the county of the
It does.
Chip Melton's.
It does.
So technically, that would come out of this.
It does. So they just basically all they're doing here is telling us how much turnout gear they need.
Okay.
And then we order as a group
So
for
that
everybody.
248, then does that reflect that 35,000?
It does. So that it comes out as a little less than
So we can subtract the 35,000 out
right.
of this.
It'll exist in another line that you'll see tomorrow for PPE
Friday.
or Friday. Sorry, yeah,
Okay, got it. Okay.
yeah. And you'll see some departments. This is the first year they've done it this way. Some departments put it in and then it totaled. Some departments you'll see put it in but put a 0 for the amount. And
Okay.
I'll point that out when we get to one of those.
Okay.
Do you think it'll affect anything about the fire departments? I know it was mentioned today in the meeting that I attended that where volunteer fire departments cannot have fundraisers, that it might affect their budget.
I'm sure it'll affect it some. Most of them have just postponed them. So like the Crawford, that when I saw that announcement
Yeah,
came
the
out,
big one. They postponed that.
yeah, I mean, so I think a lot of them will just be postponed until they can have them. It depends what kind of fundraiser.
Well, Lower Currituck's Fish Fry, they normally had it at Good Friday. That was postponed, and they have some. It's
I think a lot of it'll just shift to different times. Is my guess. So
I didn't know if it would affect their budget.
I don't think it'll affect the fundraising budget of the fire departments. I think if you are a city and you are a fully funded fire department, then that's a tough. I mean, just because of the other revenue issues that we'll talk about on Friday.
I can tell you, Lower Currituck did not rely on the Women's Auxiliaries fundraisers. I mean, the money they got raised was to do extra things, perks for the fire department on top of the budget.
And that's
so.
how most of our volunteer fire departments work. I
Right.
mean, so a good example is we talked at the last meeting about that the Corolla Fire Department wants to build that structure. They're going to build that out of fundraiser money. They don't depend on, and that's maybe a bad example because we've got the staff there, but they don't depend on the fundraisers to pay for annual operating,
Right.
some of the things they have to have in order
Some
to
of the
be fire
extras they do, training and
Extra,
different stuff.
yeah.
Right.
So on Crawford, once again, it's a pretty straightforward budget. They've got a little more money in general maintenance for buildings and grounds. But I guess that there's just a lot of little things, or maybe that's just money that they're kind of requesting. Their overall request is no greater than last year. You'll see that the capital outlay.
I mean, and I'm sure we'll get into this, but on some of these budgets, maybe never mind. I'm looking at the wrong line item. Never mind. Scratch that. Okay.
Did they
So,
take
so
one?
Mike, Crawford did something similar to what you were talking about in their budget. They included insurance, but insurance is like PPE. It actually sits in another line. So you've got $134,000 in there that's going to total up, but actually that and the PPE sit in a different budget.
Right.
I mean, so
And now, the insurance, are we, I know there was discussions of getting a group insurance policy.
so that's really a discussion I'd like for the board to have.
I mean, I don't know if that was, I don't know where we're at with that. I've heard about it, but
So there was some direction years ago, and I think this is before. Owen, it might have been when you were on the board before. Okay, but I think it's when, I don't know if anybody else here was on the board at that time. We had a study done, and it recommended, one of the recommendations it made is that we go to a group insurance plan, and the group insurance plan would sit with one carrier. That way there's interoperability and potentially cost savings. It took, how many years ago was that was talked about?
We've been talking about it since 1994.
So, so finally the
Yeah.
administration and
That when they pulled it with horses.
finally the administration and fire services started to head down that path. But I think the issue is that the people who are in the fire departments now weren't here when those discussions happened, or a lot of them weren't. The people who are on the board now weren't here when those discussions happened, except for Owen. And so I need some direction from the board if that's how they want to go. We've had some positive responses and we've had some negative responses, both. Positives being along the line of, yeah, we don't care as long as we got insurance, it's fine. The negatives being, well, we like who we're insured with and we don't want to change.
So the who shouldn't matter. It's about the coverage is what should matter, right?
So
That's
and the issue really, and Sandra just said this, and she's right. It really was about the broker.
uh-huh.
I mean, not the actual
Product.
company that was providing the insurance.
We like the individual we're buying from.
Yeah.
How much cost are we how much cost would be realized if you did that?
I don't know how much cost savings there would be because it's never. I mean, it's never been done all the way. It's been done piecemeal. I mean, I think the bigger issue was that if everybody has separate insurance policies, then there's concern that a Moyock fireman can't get on a Crawford fire truck. Mm-hmm. But if everybody's under the same insurance umbrella, then they're covered no matter whose apparatus they end up on.
Where they are or what they're doing, they're covered.
Also, it was that we're going to lose our identity. We're just losing our identity.
Yeah.
well, the other comment that was given to me was that, and I don't know if it's true or not, but that the carrier that the county was looking at was more expensive than what I'm using right now for the same coverage.
We never got that
Well, my
far.
point, that's what I said. That's what I've heard.
Yeah, I mean,
If that's the case, then yeah, maybe we should open up and say, okay, well, let's find who that is and let's.
I mean
I don't know if we're shopping it or not.
the straightest, the easiest, I mean, the most transparent way to do it would be to put together a request for proposals for insurance. Ask any company that wants to bid it. But to do that, you've got to have all of the volunteer fire departments agree that whoever comes out no matter who it is, whoever comes out as the top proposal is who we're going to go with. And I think that's where over the last 2 decades or decade or however long, it always hits a wall because people are pretty comfortable getting proposals, but when it's time to make a
Pull the
change, they
trigger.
might not want to. And at that point, if everybody doesn't go,
And if it's the same coverage, it's
well,
coverage.
it comes back to the broker. I mean, a lot of these folks have relationships with their broker and when you ask for proposals, it might not be the same broker. I mean,
There was several different companies, but like you said earlier, the leadership of the fire departments then is different than what it is today. A lot of those brokers aren't here today either.
Yeah, and if we initiate it at a county level, we kind of take the broker out of their orbit, right? You're just here's your insurance card. Do you think?
Yeah.
Right. It's
well,
not.
Yeah. I mean, and on top of that, I mean,
Matter at that
if we
point.
did it, you technically could run it through purchasing with just some input from the fire departments on what kind of coverage are we looking for,
Right.
and then it takes some of the
Make sure
issues that
everybody's got equal coverage.
yeah. But the interoperability was the bigger issue than now. If it comes in and it's $100,000 more,
Stay like
but
that.
it could be because this department might have
Right.
this level of coverage, and this department might have this.
Right.
So if everybody's now going to come up to this level of coverage, then
But if this department's over here and this one's over here, the Cadillac might need to become
yeah, but then it could go the other way too.
go back
I mean,
to
But we have the responsibility to the taxpayers who's buying this equipment now to make sure that we're getting the most bang for the buck.
well, and it's important that this isn't just equipment insurance. This is workers' comp insurance.
Yeah.
It's
all of
liability
it,
insurance.
Right. It's all of it. Right.
the whole insurance package. So
And I
Is
think
this-
part of the problem with them trying to do a group policy, especially on the buildings, is they're all owned by different people.
Entities. Yeah.
They're not all owned by Currituck County or by a single group.
Even
and,
the equipment's not all.
So even bidding it out, they're still coming up with separate policies.
Right.
So what you'd have to do is you would have to go to proposals. There'd be separate policies, but if everybody there's no way to force a fire department to go that route. But then if you get these proposals in, and they bid it based on having this whole book of business, and then you pull one or two out,
Right.
then,
It goes away.
yeah. So
Or if you,
Sounds like kind of a
would it
non-starter at
make
this
any
point.
sense? Would it make any sense to have the fire departments, if they do it independently, provide the county with like multiple different bids on their insurance to see who's got the cheapest for the same coverage that they need? I don't know.
I mean, for us, the cost matters, but it's really the reason that the study recommended was the interoperability, because there was really, especially now that volunteerism is
Yeah.
lower, you need firemen from all departments to be able to jump on a piece of equipment.
We got mutual aid going all the time throughout the county, so.
Yeah, but I think the issue was like and maybe I'm off the base from and there's not a lot of documentation on this. Documentation I saw from years ago was essentially some concern that a Moyock fire truck is sitting at a fire. A Crawford fireman shows up and wants to help run the fire truck. And I'm not a fire guy, so I don't know exactly what that means. I'll be up front.
I'm a pumper in Lower Currituck, and I go to Moax Engine and I try to take over the pumper's position, and I start working the valves on their truck.
Right. So, one, there's an issue because you're not trained on their equipment, which is a problem, which is one of the reasons that as we look at buying new equipment, it should be standardized so that that goes away. But then, two, there was a point made, and there's some validity to it, that you're not on our insurance. If this truck, you get hurt running the valves on our truck, we are liable without being protected by insurance.
So if I go up to Moax and start pumping their, working on their engine, the valves and shift something, and I blow up their pump on the truck,
Yeah.
was I trained under that department to work on that truck?
Yeah.
Would they cover it?
Yeah. And so by doing a VFIS policy, which is a volunteer fire insurance policy, and doing it as an umbrella, the coverage becomes interoperable, but
Still some,
but for right now, budget-wise,
Okay.
we've got to adopt a budget by the end of June, so
We
I
can-
need the board to kind of think through, and I don't need a direction right now, but as we move forward, we're going to have to figure out a direction on insurance, which is a minor thing, but a bigger thing. We're going to have a conversation at some point in the next fiscal year in preparation for the fiscal year after that on fire apparatus.
Okay.
What we're buying, how much we're buying, when we're buying, and how we're going to pay for the stuff we buy. But that's not something we're going to get into for next year's budget because we don't have any money.
Do you have line items built into these, or are yours of the savings? Remember we talked about the savings
Yeah,
piece?
so me and Sandra talked about it. So what's going to happen, whatever is not spent, it will be carried over so that it can be used for a piece of apparatus.
Or if they sell something,
Right.
like
It goes back into
little
that.
Currituck
We'll have
sells, a pot that they.
we will track that money so that they know. So they'll just have to call Sandra or
No, but they
Finance.
just want, if they're doing their best to try to save up towards
Yeah.
an apparatus, is it being banked somewhere and you can see?
We
it?
can we'll be able to track that and know how much that is and how much each fire department. We don't know it on insurance or PPE necessarily, but we know it on the other lines. And if they sell a piece of equipment, we know that money stays with them.
Because one of the concerns that I had talking to a couple of folks is that, let's say their budget gets approved, round numbered, 500,000.
Yeah.
And they save, they only spend 425, and they're able to save 75,000, and then that gets retained to go to that apparatus fund.
Yeah.
Are they going to be penalized, and then the budget next year is only going to be authorized for 425 because that's all the previous year did, because they just did their due diligence to try to save that money, but next year they may not be able to.
That's a tough thing because
Yeah, that's what they're afraid of.
county departments worry about the same thing. I mean, that's not just fire.
But it's use it or lose it.
Yeah.
This way they're trying to save it to go into a county apparatus, so they're trying to do their due diligence, but then are they going to get penalized for trying to do that?
Would it matter? So let's say year one after that, they realize some savings. Year two, I guess they would need to justify the difference.
Well,
really,
I mean,
to you?
I think
Being saved to an apparatus, we'd have to save for it. So
No, I'm just saying it so they'll go back up to the 500 again in the next year, the following year's budget.
so. Here's
They would
here's what I'll
ostensibly have to come in and qualify that why it went up, right? I mean, where the savings were realized in year one, ostensibly those savings would be there in year two.
maybe they
right?
cut some training off. Maybe they held off an apparatus.
Right, and that's
maybe-
what I'm saying. So
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
justify it to the manager at that point and say, "Oh, well, okay, this is what we did this year, but those expenses are back in this year."
And we might save them again, or
Right.
we might not, because
Right.
ultimately the county's trying to find money to pay for an apparatus, and they're also trying to find it. So you got us and them trying to find ways to save
Right.
and capture.
So that's what I'm
the
saying,
money's
that-
not going anywhere.
Yeah,
it's
but
just being
if they're
saved.
justifying their budget, I think
The-
we're having a different discussion, right?
There are two times whenever I'm going to have questions. The first one is, and I'll use the $500,000 number. Let's say that's the budget. They save 75. They come in next year asking for 550. Why are you asking
I
for
could see that,
550?
yes.
You know, no, you know, or they come in and they want something other than just a fire truck, some other big piece of capital when they're sitting on, 75,000. I'm going to say, well, I mean, we're going to, because all this money comes from property taxes and general fund money. So those are the only two times I would really.
Yeah, no, if they saved and they wanted more, okay, I can understand
Yeah.
that. But if they come back with next year and say, okay, 500 again the next year,
Yeah.
okay, Yes, I see your point on that one. Yeah, I would question that as
Yeah,
well.
but we do the same with I mean, the departments that answer to the manager too. I mean, they worry about that if I don't spend this money, I mean,
That's typical
I know,
that's the case with, I'm sure that,
government.
I'll look at
spending.
teachers were probably the same.
For everybody who had money left over, we pulled it together and said, okay, let's get a map for that wall.
That's where the fire department should
Yeah.
know, hey, we all got to pull in to try to save some
Yeah.
money for an apparatus. If we help out, can we
Yeah.
be, don't want to be penalized for
Right.
doing it, but.
Right.
But yeah, so no, I mean, I'm not somebody that believes in a use it or lose it. Now, when we get to the general fund tomorrow, we have cut some costs back to previous years, but that's due to the economic situation, not because somebody didn't spend money.
Okay.
So,
I'm looking over these and I'm just comparing like Mayock to Crawford.
mm-hmm.
And when you look at utilities, Crawford has 28,000,
Mm-hmm.
and then Mayock has 14,000.
Crawford has an extra station, or they've got 2 extra stations.
3 buildings.
Then you look at building grounds, $45,000 for Crawford for general maintenance,
Mm-hmm.
12,000 for Mayock.
Well, that's going to be done.
Is a small. I mean, they have to, and I don't cut the grass at any fire station. Put that in there, but they got to cut 3 properties too, though.
Well, you figure one's total's around 60,000 and the other total's around 12,000.
And so some of that's going to be the extra buildings, but some of it could be they've got small repairs that they're.
But all this y'all check and see what it's for, or do you just kind of...
We look into it normally the way that it would work is the FIAB would vet it heavily, but the FIAB hasn't met this year because the budgets came in and we've had COVID. So if you would like for me to look into that before we present the budget, I can give Ryland a call.
Because you look at subscriptions, Mayock, 4,500, 11,000 at Crawford.
They get a lot of magazines.
No, it's not.
I
It's
mean,
not
it's,
those.
Yeah.
when you look
Subscriptions
at
is-
Somebody's.
when you look at the
Yeah, it's
two,
different.
just comparing these two, there's quite a bit of difference in it, and I didn't know how much somebody has gone over all of this.
These budgets have not been cut at all. These are the budgets as the fire, because last year I did something a little different. I went in and made changes, and going through that process, I decided what I'd do is see what questions you guys had about the budgets, and then go get that information for
Well,
you all.
Another one, Kitty raises a good point. I was sitting here going through vehicle cost. Mayock, 44,500. Crawford, 56,283. Lower Currituck, 83,000. Corolla, 94,000.
There's a big difference in
Yeah.
all of this.
And
Well, but if you look at
Corolla,
the total vehicles, I
59,000.
mean, that's fuel and the maintenance. And then
but
some of those
Crawford's
older,
got probably the most equipment of any of them.
yes, but Lower Currituck's got some. They've had pumps go down. They've had major repairs on some of the big engines, and when you and the cost to repair some of those things is not
Oh,
cheap.
it's astronomical.
It is. They
Yeah.
got
I know
pumps.
it's expensive.
Yeah, so I mean, those general vehicle maintenances, those are for the apparatuses that are, like an engine or something. They have a seal. So I mean, that's
You got a fire truck
You gotta
down
do
there that's older than you,
brakes on
don't
it.
you?
If somebody's got a
yeah.
lot more
And you got to
fire,
realize we
they
have,
use brakes.
and our apparatuses out there are old. They got some old,
Yeah, you got one that's older than you, don't
Has
you?
Yeah.
Chief Milton gone through these, or anybody?
He
No, like-
sent them to us.
Yeah, but like I said, I mean, we're presenting them exact. So the way that I'm wanting to do this is you all, since the FIAB didn't have a chance, what questions do you all have? Here's the thing, though. Chief Melton's not going to get too deep into the volunteer fire department operations.
Right. That's
Because
a cost for services. Yeah.
that's the fire department's business.
And
I mean,
they're not in the business of making a profit, so it's not going anywhere other than what it's going to.
whatever
right?
they don't use in the budget now, we're allowing them to save it to go toward a new apparatus.
for those that, so, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sandra, we have 2 ways that people budget. We have people who budget line item,
It's up there.
and then we have people who just get a chunk of money. Is that right?
Yes, we have Knott's Island, Modoc, and Corolla that we pay all their bills. And so we see everything they do. We have, everybody else, Lower Currituck, Crawford, and Corova, that they get 1/6 of their budget in July, and then they get 1/11 of everything else, because typically there's, insurance and stuff that was due in July. But they get a lump sum, and they send us an Excel spreadsheet with.
We pay Modoc bills again. I know they used to, and then they didn't, and then they do again.
Corolla's got to.
We pay Modoc,
Knox Island.
Knox Island, and Corolla. And Knox Island and Corolla, but Knox Island's completely us. I mean, there's not a volunteer system over there that gets the funding, it's all us. Corolla is split between, they get a volunteer fire budget, and they get the fire people that are county employees. But all of that is funded through the fire district and the SAFER grant, which is in its last year this year.
A point that Sandra made that I want to make sure you all heard. So some fire departments, any money that's left over at the end of the year stays with the county. Some fire departments, they get a distribution every month, and so that money does not necessarily stay with the county.
Right.
Oh, it does. At June 30th, we balance, and we take anything back that they didn't spend.
Okay.
There you go.
But now we're not taking it back. Like,
We're holding it. Think of it as holding.
Back and hold it.
yeah, hold it. Yeah,
Hold it.
Yeah, they can't carry it over to next year's budget, but we hold that into
Hold
that
it.
line item now.
And track it.
We
And,
gave them, Lower Currituck, for example, they give us accounting after the fact, basically.
Okay.
So in August, when they give us their June reconciliation for the year, if their budget's 300,000 and we already gave it all to them,
Okay.
and their paperwork shows they only spent 250, their 1/6 check will be less $50,000.
But it'll go into that. But it'll go into that.
but
line
we'll
item,
track
hold
it and then
Track it,
reserve
yes.
it. And
Yes,
Yeah.
then that's what. Yeah, that's all they were concerned about. there.
So,
So I guess the point of that is that I don't know. Does somebody go through and ask them to justify each and every line in here? No. Chief Melton doesn't. Like I said, last year I went through and made some cuts, but the feedback that I got from community and
not good.
yeah, so I'm just presenting the budget exactly as it was given to us. If they don't spend the money, then it's reserved for them. Like I said, there is less spend this year than there was last year, but it's because of a piece of apparatus. I think it was 1.6 million last year, and I think it's 1.1 this year, something in that range. I can't remember exactly, but that's close. So,
All right, so I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, just looking at Corova. You guys, you and I had talked about SCBA air refill system. Was that for Corova? Do you remember that conversation?
So Corova wants an SCBA air refill system at $50,000. The issue is they don't really do a whole lot. So typically you need those breathing units when you do an internal attack.
Cascade system.
Yeah, I mean, they don't go through that much oxygen. So I've asked Chief Melton to look in to see what is just the most affordable
Could you supply
SCBA
more
cascade
tanks?
system that you can get. Because that one's probably more than we need to spend on one that's very rarely going to actually fill
Yeah,
up
those
tanks.
are where you have a long running fire. You got to keep your bottles.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Right.
And I'm not going to say it can't happen. Normally it's for internal attacks.
But the nice thing about it now with going to mutual aid and we got the universal air packs now, all the bottles are interchangeable. So
Yeah.
before the problem we had is Lower Currituck's bottles
Right.
wouldn't go on Crawford's air packs. Now all the bottles go
Yeah.
together. So now we can.
And I guess Corova's concern is the only person that's coming to really help them is Corolla.
Right.
But they're coming. I mean,
Right.
assuming that it gets paged out properly and everything works the way it should with protocols, then
Well, if I'm not mistaken, Lower Currituck's Cascade film machine was on Rescue 50, the Rescue that you just sold.
oh yeah.
Yeah, that had the refill Cascade, And I don't believe they have a field one now anymore, and they
Yeah.
probably do more work then. But they have one in there. They do have a fill station in the bay.
That's what I think Corova lacks one
Corova
even
wants
in the bay.
Right, they
They
want
want
one
a
in the
bay
bay.
one, a fill
Right,
one,
they
but
want
not
a bay
okay,
one.
not
But
a
I
low
think
one.
that you can do it for less money than what they've asked for. Is what I'm getting at.
Right.
The capital is really the area in these budgets that I think that I'd encourage you guys to really take a look at as we go through. So
Well,
because
that's why I pinged on that one. I saw they've got $170,000 in there for capital, and
Yeah, I
they
think
got to
there's
replace
a
the generator, siding. I get that. Helipad. I guess that's the one down in.
that would be where they want to build another station. I think I don't know if it's how needed it is. I
Yeah.
mean,
I wouldn't think they that needs to happen. I mean, you think about the bulk of our.
well, they're going to be airlifted out there.
Yeah, the day trippers, the bulk of the people are right there in Swan Beach. So that's where you come up where most of our parking pass people are in that first couple miles. So they got that. We seem to have our drownings happen there, things of that nature, right there where that pad is. So it probably is a vital, would be a vital asset to them to have, and the community at large.
So on the fire budgets, I guess I need some direction on how far into the business of the fire department do you want staff to get?
Probably not that much.
Basically, right now, if it's capital and it's approved in the budget, we don't do anything. If it's capital and it's over $5,000 and it hasn't been listed in the budget, we bring it to you. But that's for
I mean, the only thing I would maybe question is just let's confirm what their capital items, what they consist of. That I really, I mean, like you said, maybe we just look into the capital projects, get a little more information on those.
Yeah.
But
The
if
other
you-
stuff's going to be kind
Yeah,
of,
that's
there's
their
not much
operation,
cost
yeah,
control there, right?
The one thing I will ask you is, we've always had that fee in there for fire hydrant maintenance, and it was available to any stations that wanted to utilize that. And I'm not sure. I know Laura Currituck still would like that because they go out and they do the maintenance, they paint them and check them. They wanted to make sure that was still available this year. I think it's a good.
I think it is. Yeah,
And I
I'm
think
pretty-
any fire department can utilize that too if they want to.
Yeah, yeah, that's still.
That's still line item in there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because it was in there this year. So
Last year it was. Remember when I mentioned something to you and we had to get it back in?
yeah, it was we did a budget amendment.
Yeah.
It wasn't that it was. Is it that it wasn't in there, or it wasn't
I don't
enough to
think
do
it
all the
wasn't in there.
hydrants?
I don't think it was in there for budgeted.
Equipment's always moving.
I think you had to go back
When
and.
the contract came in, the contract was more money than
Yeah.
the appropriation, so we had to do something about it.
Yeah, because what's happening is when they go out there, they're finding more hydrants that weren't listed, and they turn into paperwork to the water department.
Yeah.
And it was so much per hydrant, so they
I
give a
think I know
list
we
and-
had to make that adjustment. That
Yes,
part I
because they
remember.
find
Yeah.
more than the water department had listed.
Yeah.
Which is, that's another nice thing about doing it.
Yeah.
Is they're finding hydrants that weren't even listed in the county
Yeah.
site.
And wasn't another department interested in doing it?
Crawford might have been.
I think
interested.
Crawford brought up some interest finally in that now.
And there was maybe even one question about could
Bunch of cow.
a department do it in another department's area if the department didn't want to do it?
Yeah, that I'm just, I don't know if that's.
Swan Beach, that's 35.
The nice thing about if your department does that is your department now finds all the
Yeah.
hydrants, they know where they're all at. They get the training on maintenance in them, they paint them, they weed eat them, they mark them.
Yeah.
But then your department knows where everything's at and you get good training. That's the
Yeah.
nice thing about doing it locally.
You can GPS them.
What's that?
You can GPS them.
Yes.
We've got a
what
lot of
happens
them
is-
mapped, but
they
yeah.
know where they're
Well,
at.
when we get paged out, we get a page out of the call. Plus, it gives us a map of where the fire or the vehicle accident is, and then it also tells you where the nearest fire hydrants
Yeah.
are. So we know going there, we can look up. We got a hydrant hit, and then if we find new ones, we turn it in. So now when it gets mapped, it gets into the system, so we know where all the fire hydrants are located, and if they're dry ones or if they're a county one, which is it's a nice feature.
So what we'll do on if everybody's good with the budgets on the volunteer fire departments, what we'll do is ask them to send justification in for their capital outlay and get that to.
Yeah, Corova, like they've got generator replacement, 50 grand. Is the generator non-functional, or?
Right. What does that mean?
And like I said, we can get that justification. The point today is to figure out what you all needed.
Probably is 25 years old, 30 years old.
Yeah.
however long it's
We're always going to be
might
asking
be
for
rotting
vehicles,
through.
but those are $600,000-800,000.
Yeah, we
pop,
can't
so
afford that. So,
Right.
That's tough.
and something that will be coming forward is some kind of, we've been kind of working on it. COVID really stopped it in its tracks, but we're going to hold a meeting with the volunteer fire chiefs and presidents once we get back to where we can do some business as usual, and have a discussion about a study to figure out what apparatus we need, what the specs look like, and how we're going to, what does the cost look like and the timing. Then after that, come to you guys after that study's done, present that, and then we can have a discussion about funding.
Are we still, is the county still, are you still budgeting a certain amount every year to go towards an apparatus? I know we budgeted $250.
Yep. So that's we looked at it a little bit ago. It's this fire
where's it
equipment, and it's $267,000.
Okay.
The old penny plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, because,
Half
well,
a penny
that's
plan.
going to take 4 years to fund one vehicle, so.
I will tell you, to fund fire apparatus the way that we need to, you're looking at a tax increase.
Oh, yeah.
There's no way around it.
You're at least $6 million or something to get at least probably for
I mean,
the apparatus you need.
The average lifespan of a fire truck is 25 years. So if every 25 years you're replacing one, I'm just ballparking. Like I said, we're going to do an in-depth study that'll tell us. But let's say every station needs 2 pieces of equipment. We've got 9 departments, but how many stations do we have? I'm looking at Kevin because he'll.
But how many different,
Low.
Crawford has 3, Crawl has 2.
Lower Currituck has 3.
Lower Currituck has 3.
We got Knott's Island, Gibbs Woods. Knott's Island, Corova.
Yeah, so I think, is it 11?
I think it is.
Yeah.
So, if you're talking about 11, so right there, you've got to buy a piece of apparatus essentially
You're
every
15.
year.
Well, and that's why you're seeing the vehicle maintenance so high, is because they're keeping those things on the road.
But you're talking about needing to generate a penny's worth of. It's a penny to 2 pennies every year just to buy fire apparatus if you want to keep replacing them at that level.
Not that we're going to do this, but I just want to ask the question.
It's 11 then.
Okay,
Isn't
thank you.
there still a county-wide fire district in place? I thought there was one.
Yeah, there is.
There
It's just
is.
buried into
Yeah,
the whole
it's just
rate.
buried, but it's always been there. But
But
it's,
you're
Looking at you,
limited.
Like 4
Okay.
okay, so there still is.
Sandra says yes.
Yes.
And Owen's nodding his head too.
Well, we
Yeah.
talked about that at actually, when we went to our new commissioner training, they had tax districts break out the varying levels of tax, whether it's school tax, fire tax, this tax, that tax. We just don't do that.
Years ago, didn't they
yeah,
do
we
that,
did.
Owen, like a penny or
Consolidated
something?
it, right?
We did, but I'll give you an example. If you use mainland Knott's Island, a penny of tax generates $13,000.
Yeah, it's not enough.
You have to tax the whole county in order to generate enough
Well,
Well, that's why we went
to a whole county.
to the whole county, because I think you're limited by statute on some of them to 15-cent max,
Yeah.
but most of them were 5 to 8 cent, were they not, Sandra?
Yeah, in 2005, when we did reval, and the values went up, except for Knott's Island. And Knott's Island, there was no way to get a tax rate to even fund them $60,000.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Moyoc mainland, a penny generates 87,000. Gibbs Woods, $3,000.
That was the penny-wide fire tax that they used to talk about. That was in place at one time. Right?
Yeah,
Is
because
that
you
correct?
had Crawford.
Tax was on the fire equipment replacement,
Okay.
but 2 cent a tax was fire district.
That would pay the operating costs.
Yeah, but that's what it,
Operating costs, but
Right.
now,
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Corolla and Knott's Island have their own tax.
Right.
Now, there's some transfer from the general fund into those to cover seasonal stuff or
but
Knott's
at one
Island.
time, years ago, the county was collecting a fire tax in
Yeah.
the county.
But we had different rates because Lower Currituck, I think we were at 3 cent. Well, Poplar Branch, 3 cent. Knott's Island was 15, and Crawford was 5, and I think Mayotte
If
was
you
8 cents.
if you split operational costs by tax districts like that, you end up with have and have not departments.
Yeah.
And that's why it was done away with, back in,
We equalized it so everybody could
Get a-
benefit.
okay.
That's for the benefit of the whole county, so.
Yeah, it all was done the year that everybody's budget was $257,000.
And it cut the taxes for every citizen in the county. Because
Just a
we
little
were,
education there for
we
you,
were
Ben.
able to equalize it.
Yeah, there's never been
now you know
a
the rest of the story.
countywide 2-cent fire tax listed, but we took 2 cent of the general fund tax for that initial funding. That was the year that we collapsed all of the fire districts because of that,
Okay.
because of the not silent Corolla problem.
But having said that, the actual cost of the contract for the fire departments is still 2 cents because it's 1.1 million, I think, this year. So it's
1.8 something.
Yeah, it can't be 1.1.
so. I think when you take capital out, when you take the
Take capital out.
and
Well,
insurance and PPE, I think is the other part that lives somewhere
Right.
else. But
Much still costs us to have that.
Okay, so right now we're looking at keeping what was presented is what's in the budget. We're just going to investigate with the capital,
I'll get justification
Projects,
and have that
okay.
available for you guys whenever I
And-
present the budget.
and the fire hydrant fee is going to be in there.
It'll be in there.
Okay, okay.
Yep. Anything else on fire departments? All right. We're going to talk about the compensation study or salary study. I want to start with the hard part. We're not going to be able to fund it. That's the.
That didn't seem so hard to say.
Gosh, rolled that
That
right
right
out.
out, right.
I've
It
been
seemed-
practicing
didn't seem-
a lot
right.
lately.
Just rolled off his tongue.
Right.
They did a study, and I'm not going to walk through the whole thing. I encourage you guys to kind of take a look at it. But the basically, if you turn to page, I'm going to jump to the important page and the page everybody wants to know. If you jump to page 20, page 19. The first thing they did is they looked at our step 3, which is where we hire most of our employees in at, and they compared it to the 25th percentile of the respondents that came back. The respondents that came back varied from places such as Portsmouth, Chesapeake, Pasquotank County, Bertie County, Newport News, Hertford County, Camden County, Chowan County, so Elizabeth City. So a lot of places, we got a lot of places that we looked at. The jobs that you see listed on page 19 and 20 are the job titles where they basically said that a pay grade increase was warranted. This is step 1.
Looks like everybody had that, yeah.
Well, no, I mean, so if you'll go back, we actually reviewed quite. So if you look, you see where it says survey job number beside of that.
Yes.
So every job that was surveyed had a number. So we did 77 positions. So if you see it skipping numbers, that means it's skipping jobs. It didn't recommend in step 1 for an increase.
Oh, okay.
Now, like I said, this is the first step in the analysis. So then they took this list that said, okay, step 3 is out of whack with the 25th percentile. And then they compared the midpoint of our grade range. So like I'm going to make up numbers here, but let's say that you were a planner and the grades are from $30,000 to $60,000. They're trying to make sure the middle of that grade range is the same in these other places after they adjust for cost of living. If you go to page 23, it takes the list you saw on page 19 and it highlights in green everybody that also had a misalignment at the midpoint. And these are the positions that they recommend be increased.
Just the ones in green.
Just the ones in green. There are a couple of important jobs to point out, though, that aren't in green.
Yeah, where's the commissioner one?
The biggest one that's not in green on here, and we'll get into this in just a second, and it's on page 25, is your EMT intermediate firefighter. The reason that it's not in green is that you'll see some of them say insufficient market data, and it means they just didn't have a good comparison for the midpoint. And so what they say on those is you really have to evaluate those individually to determine if you as a organization think that they should be shifted. Most of the ones who have that language are not. They might have one person in the position, but we have quite a few firefighter EMT intermediates. We just in Corolla and Knott's Island. And I'll come back to that here in just a second. So, if you go to page 28, it gives you the estimated cost to implement this study. The estimated cost is $329,897. It's important to understand that's just the salary cost. Retirement is going to be, other FICA, there's other costs that go up with that, overtime.
So you're going to be well over $500,000 when it's all said and done. 600,000, 700,000.
It wouldn't be that much, but you'd be looking at every bit of $475 with FICA and retirement. But here's the part that's where I'm going to take you above the $500,000 mark. The cost to do the intermediate firefighters at the level where they should go, if you take firefighters basic to $16.06 an hour, which is what they recommend, the cost to do that for each position for intermediate is about $13,000. So each one of those employees, in theory, could potentially see up to a $13,000 pay increase.
And that's just on a base level, right? That's
Yes.
not counting if they get into overtime.
Correct. And they always get into overtime.
Right.
So we have, I think, 8 intermediate firefighters in Corolla and Knott's Island combined. So 8 times 13, no, it's 10. So it's $130,000 on top of the 326. Because they didn't figure that in because they had insufficient market data for that one.
So that doesn't count the
FICA, it doesn't count retirement.
I'm saying that's just the intermediate. That doesn't count the paramedic firefighter.
They're not even in this
Study this year.
study.
That's probably another 150. So it's closer to like 600,000.
But the basic firefighters are about 130,000 of the 330,000 that you see here too.
So it would be 13,000 increase.
The reason for that, let me explain why it's that way. The reason that it ended up that way is when the firefighter position was created, we took and I'll use the basic, an EMT basic. We took their salary, which is around $34,000, and we divided that by, we essentially gave them the same salary, but they work more hours.
Right.
That's basically the gist of it, without getting too far into the weeds. So their hourly rate, if you go back to the page that had all the green, page 19, for instance, if you look at firefighter EMT basic, it's position number 24. You'll see that the current pay grade step 3 hourly rate is $11.38. And the recommended hourly rate is $16.06. I went and just double checked to kind of verify, and Rocky Mount, for instance, is hiring firefighters right now, and it's in the hourly rate is in the $16 range.
Okay.
Now, our firefighters work 24-hour shifts. Not all firefighters work 24-hour shifts. Some of them work 12-hour shifts. Now,
I work 18s.
yeah, it can get really kind of crazy
All
on
over
the
the
shift
place.
schedule, but But I can tell you that in Corolla especially, you're going to struggle to recruit people on 12-hour shifts because a firefighter can't really afford to live in Corolla. And if you're driving around that's the challenge. I mean, especially when they can go to Elizabeth City or somewhere else.
Or out of Dare County
And we've had a retention problem in fire. I mean, I will tell you that we lose employees from there. It probably, of all the positions in the county, it is the one with the worst
and it's
turnover
always been
rate.
due to pay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably 80%.
Didn't we lose 2 last week?
Yeah, but one of those,
I was just told about it.
yeah.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
Retention rate is high. I mean,
Turnover rate's high.
Turnover rate's high.
And it is. I mean, so basically they look and they can go work a 12-hour shift at Kitty Hawk and make $16 an hour. Or they can work a 24-hour shift in Corolla and make $11 an hour. Now, they're sleeping part of that time. I mean, I'll be up front, but they're there. They're on the clock. I mean,
Not at home with their family.
yeah. So,
So,
I mean, I can't, what I'm telling you, though, and I said at the very front, that's why I led with that, I can't afford to do anything about it this year. At least until we get to December and see if money comes in.
well, so are you talking about the whole thing, or do we just? It seems to me you're focusing on the firefighters. Or is the biggest problem biggest pressing issue right now in front of us?
So I have a problem doing just the firefighters, though, and here's my reason. We did the sheriff's office last year, so we're going to do the fire department this year, and all of the other employees are not going to get anything. And I have a problem with that.
Right.
I mean, I just do. Now, so I think you either do the entire study or we hold off and we break this into 2 chunks if the money comes in December. But until we know what the economy is going to do and what our revenues are going to be, I can't do any of it. I can't do the fire, and I can't do. I mean, my recommendation is not to do any of it right now.
It seems like your fire though has the biggest disparity out of all of these. Like we
It does
got
because
that way wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it does because of the way we calculated the pay. I mean, that's.
But Ben, is this such a problem, being so low that we could be in a situation where we can't staff it?
We can always recruit, but what it does is it turns us into a recruiting station.
Yep. We train them and they leave.
Training
And then they bounce.
Train 'em and
we're
they
doing
leave.
that now.
But my point is, we're not to the point where we can't recruit, right?
Correct.
So it's not a public safety,
We don't have a public safety
Danger.
crisis.
right?
We have burnout. I mean, we have employees that are working a lot of overtime.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
What's our overtime cost? What is that? That's probably the bigger question. What does that look like? Relative to implementing.
and if I'm not mistaken, a few years ago we had an employee down there that worked a lot of hours. He got off and he got in a wreck and flipped his
Right,
vehicle
crashed
in
his
Lower
car.
Currituck.
Yep.
He was so tired he fell asleep at the wheel.
Yeah.
so our year-to-date, and I'm just going to use Corolla because they're in separate budgets. And this will be the bigger of the 2 numbers because Knott's Island doesn't, they have less people.
Mm-hmm.
But our overtime, the overtime right now is at $582,000 for Corolla Fire, but I mean we budgeted $506 because they have built-in overtime in their schedule. I mean, so they are naturally going to get some, but we did a budget amendment to be able to. So we took the budget to $685,000 because we had overspent because you don't have people, you've got to staff it with callbacks is the term.
So, and we're short. Do you know how off the top of your head how many people we're short in Corolla right now? So
No, we're short more than that.
more than that. No, all these people working overtime because they're filling shifts that are
They're filling shifts
not.
that are short.
Yeah.
I want to say we might be short 4 or 5.
Goodness.
So the
But
bigger question
fire,
is, so,
fire has turnover. I mean,
well, they're going to have turnover. We understand,
Yeah.
but maybe we grab somebody from somewhere else now that wants to work and crawl, right? So there's a reverse side of that.
there is.
So that's kind of where I'm headed. Is it may be costing us more in overtime. Or part of the not more, but you're
They're
gonna
gonna still have some of it.
half of it, half of the overtime budget could go away and putting the personnel in place. Or
I don't
something
think
like that.
I don't think half could.
Maybe a third. I think you could do a third.
I'd have to crunch the numbers on actual schedule.
If you're actually
Do you remember what the
staffed up,
scheduled- how many hours of scheduled overtime do they get a year? Do you know?
They work 96, 120, and 120. So it depends on your definition of overtime.
First 5.5. They're the same as law enforcement. They don't get-
No, they're
Oh, no,
they're worse
on
than law
280.
they're
enforcement.
way worse than you guys.
Oh, they
It's
are?
like 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's
Oh,
like
they're
10.
on- Yeah, they're on 212 schedules. They don't get overtime until
Till
212.
89.
No, till 106.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah,
are
so
worse.
So yeah, I mean, so if you figure that they've got a 90, so on a week that they have high, well, let's see, on their short pay period when it's a 96 and a 120, and you said it's 106, is that right?
106 is their base, yeah.
So then every paycheck on a short week they're getting,
Hours of overtime.
yeah.
No, on a short.
On a short week, they're getting 14 hours of overtime. On a short week, actually, they're not getting overtime. On a long week, they're getting 14 hours of overtime.
Right.
So there's 14, let's see, 15,
I know.
They tell me all.
10.
Oh, yeah. Well, they do it because they like them.
So, I mean, every time there's a long week for somebody, it's around 210 hours of overtime. I mean, so there is a lot of built-in overtime in fire. You're not going to cut the overtime
That much.
that
I guess.
much.
Okay.
You could cut some, but
But once again, I come back to the issue of
I get it.
yeah, I mean,
But you're $4 and something an hour off, where most of them are $1 or $2
Yeah.
an hour.
I mean,
or
it's
less.
just, it's
That's
pretty
significant.
egregious.
It's significant. And even if it's not
Now
the whole
there's-
thing, if it's taking it to 14 from 11.
well, there's two ways to fix the problem. And like I said, I'm not recommending that we do this, but I'm just saying, I'm giving you your options. You can go to a 12-hour shift. You keep the pay the same, but you cut the number of hours they have to work.
you're gonna have more overtime.
And option 2?
Is, well, if you're going to do something, is to raise the pay. But I can't. I do not have the money right now to do that. And it's not that I don't want to. I don't want, I mean,
Always could volunteer some hours, just saying.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have the money in the projected revenues that you're.
correct.
Okay.
Anything, we're already, I mean, I'm going to
That's on.
ruin the surprise, but we are already, if our expenditures hold and our revenues turn out where we think they're going to, we would already be getting into general fund balance somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think it's around $500,000. You're going to see a number of 4.7 in the budget, but we always budget some fund balance. But
That's based on your assumption of the shortfall this
right,
year.
so anything we add through the budget process
Goes to
is,
the record of
is
fund balance.
fund balance. And I would really discourage using fund balance to cover recurring costs.
Right.
I mean, so
Not recurring costs, but what about lost revenue for short term, which could be recouped if the economy changes?
I think one-off capital, that kind of thing, if we've got some capital spend we need to cover, that kind of thing, I'm okay with it in the short term, but
You don't want to
No,
be.
you don't want it.
You don't want it year after year after year.
Take
Yeah.
care of recurring. I understand that.
and if the economy does, for some reason, didn't bounce back, you can't then go and cut the salaries.
You'd have to do something else, and understand that.
Yeah.
But if the economy does come back, or if it doesn't hit what you're projecting, and it actually
Yeah.
is okay,
I
or
mean-
just, I mean,
Two things that he stated earlier, the tap fees and the water fees, that's $1.3 million more revenue than what we were set already. I mean,
Like-
I'm just saying that's just a.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not worried.
Gloom and doom as we were discussing.
There are aspects of our revenue projections that I think are ahead, but
There's something.
But all of those
yeah, but
are
those-
user
that-
pay.
all of those are enterprise fund fees.
Right. It's not the same thing.
and I get you want to be you're trying to be cautious and be a good steward of the taxpayers' dollars.
I mean, so, and this is getting into some of the conversation tomorrow or Friday, but, I mean, the COLA, though, is the same way. I mean, there is no COLA in the budget this year. Mm-hmm. Because...
And how much is that COLA? What is that budget?
Do you remember what the COLA was going to run?
And we approved that in last year's budget.
$1,000.
Call it 4.
Yeah.
400,000.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
400,000.
I was just saying, the last time we did it, I thought it was around $500,000, something like that.
Okay, 400,000 would.
Even with this study, we can address it again in December.
All of these things we can look at in December and add things back.
Okay.
I would encourage the board to do that. Mm-hmm. You know, let's be very conservative as we head into the fiscal year. And if we get to December and things have turned around, we can add in COLAs, we can add in salary study, we can add some capital purchases back in that we've cut out.
Add it and then you talking retroactive?
I wouldn't retroactive it.
You're just going forward there.
Going forward.
Right, that's a starting point, yeah.
Going forward. But, you know, there's positions that I think we probably need, but they're not in the budget because I just...
Well, also, we've got to think about, you know, hurricane season. We don't know what might happen, and then we'll really be hurting.
I mean...
So I think if we look at this, because I definitely think these firefighters...
Yeah, we're going to have to do something there.
But something's got to be done.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't care about the turnover, but to me, $11 is a disgrace.
Do we have a projection on what the feds are going to give us in terms of dollars?
So we do. The projection that's come in is $700,000, but the catch with that is you have to use that for COVID-related expenses. Because we don't have a health department, and we have one, but it's not a county department. The only thing we can talk about how we view that, but it's going to be a lot of things that we could supplant some of the salary for the people that work the checkpoint. But, I mean...
Yeah, FEMA pays all that. We have to do COVID-19.
Yeah, and so and you got to use that money before you get into FEMA money is what the state's asking. Now, if the federal government would change the rule that the money can be used for revenue replacement, then there's probably another $700,000 that would come down to us. I think that one's really a big guess, but it would probably be about the same amount of money. The state is giving us half the money. They're holding roughly half of it in hopes that the federal government will say that you can use it to offset revenue losses. And if they did that, then we're having a different conversation maybe. Having said that, that money I would recommend using for capital because it's a one-time injection of money.
Yeah.
To fund stuff like a COLA or this, we need to see our revenues come in strong, taxes, sales tax, and other things come in stronger.
So you're I guess we'll talk about it more Friday, but you're suggesting let's wait for the first quarter or so to come through and see where we're at.
Look at the end of the year.
December. I'd say that
if we did July is the physical year.
Yeah, I mean
second quarter.
Sorry, first quarter of the calendar year.
Okay, yeah,
yes.
okay.
Sorry,
yeah.
I think.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, so somewhere around January, have that conversation. Maybe that's a big part of the retreat this year. You know, or maybe we have a special retreat in December just to talk about how we're looking in our budget. We probably should get together.
I would like to do an earlier get together to see how we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have a good by November. We're going to know.
By December, because sales tax lags.
They don't report right till.
Yeah, sales tax is.
So lags.
September is when we get June sales.
Right.
tax.
So you got a lag.
So the middle of December, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that would be good then to get a reassessment.
But I mean, like I said, I'm making some tough recommendations. I don't like making them. I don't want to sit here and I don't feel good, you know, saying that we shouldn't do these things. But if we're being responsible stewards, I think we need to hold off.
Of the budget we approved last year, which is a 2-year budget, which we approved this year's budget tentatively. What are we looking at as 10% off of that, less or more than that?
You're talking about, so property taxes we held steady. Sales tax was a reduction in revenue, and Kevin, I gave you the numbers, but I think it was like a $2.5 million reduction in sales tax.
It was 2 and some change. Wow.
Yeah. Transfer tax is roughly $3 million. That one might not come to be, like I said, this year, because we're in such,
Uncharted.
I mean, I've got to start at worst case, and then we work our way from there.
Right.
Um,
Well, after the summer month, that we start getting some reports in, it's going to give us a little bit better.
yeah.
I think what you're seeing, the reports you start seeing in October will probably give us an idea kind of how.
When we get our
December's
sales
gonna end
tax for July, that'll give us an idea of how far off we are. And OC tax, and we'll get into that tomorrow, but it was hit pretty heavily as well. We've got fund balance that we can handle OC tax, but there's some capital projects we'll talk about tomorrow.
up. All right. Well, I think we just need to monitor our revenues in over the next few months.
So, one other thing I wanted to discuss that's a budget item. I would like to make a change to the way that we do our health insurance. We stay with the same company. The employees won't tell any difference. We currently are under a fully insured model. We're at a large enough population where we can go to a self-insured model. Also, because we're good stewards with our money, we've got funding there in case we, if the way that works, a self-insured model, when you have a bad year, you pay for it. When you have a good year, you save the money. And what you do is you budget here, and you stick that money in a separate account so that when you have a bad year, you've got the reserves. When you have a good year, you've stuck it back because it's pretty cyclical. We have been having a problem under the fully insured model because you can't bid out certain things separately, like stop loss, which is kind of like if you have a claim over $125,000, stop loss actually covers anything over that. But when you're fully insured, you have to stay with the company that insures the rest of your stuff. Mm-hmm. And our fully insured model, it's not like we don't have to pay the claims. I mean, we still end up paying the claims. And so my recommendation is to go to a self-insured model, which will save us about $154,000 this year. So no increase to rates for employees.
Services will be the same.
Yeah, I mean, the deductibles stay the same. I guess the concern is that potentially you could be taking a little more risk with your claims data, but I mean, we're at the good number of employees where that risk kind of levels out when you've got this many people, and our workforce is getting younger. I mean,
We've got a history, so we know
what our
typically,
claims
right?
are,
And
We still
you-
have stop loss.
and we do still have stop loss. So
Okay.
yeah, I mean, it's not like the stop loss goes away. It's still the most you're going to pay on the claim is $125,000. We negotiated heavily with Cigna. The other thing they've done is they've guaranteed our stop loss rate for 3 years.
Oh.
So because it kept creeping up, and I kind of got tired of that. So we'll and that gives and like I said, for the employees it's good because everything stays the same. The average employee doesn't know.
right,
They'll never
They won't
notice
feel
that
it.
change.
Right.
Okay. So.
So,
Okay. This is the first year I can remember a long time that we didn't have an increase on insurance then.
Well, it'll start back next year.
Well, I mean for this year
Yeah.
though, but
But it saves us. I mean, it gives us a little breathing room.
time to see what's going to happen.
Yeah. So
Everybody will get new cards.
yeah.
So if anybody says, why am I getting a new card? That's why.
But next year we can still look at more options though.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you can always look at options. I would take. I mean, so we went out and we bid out aggressively. So we bid out self-insured with Blue Cross, with MedCost.
United Health and all that.
Say what?
United Health was.
They looked at MedCost, Blue Cross, Cigna. I don't know if they got it from United or Aetna.
Okay.
Cigna came back though. At first they didn't come back as the cheapest, but we kept going back to them because of the fact that employees, even though it doesn't change anything really, employees get very stressed out when the name on their insurance card changes.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that to them in the middle of a health crisis. So we worked really hard to try to get Cigna to be the
Okay.
Keep it. Right.
yeah.
And Blue
So they-
Cross was like $1 million.
Yeah, Blue Cross wasn't even close.
Good.
Yeah.
So
Good
their
God.
benefits won't change at all, deductions.
No,
Just like status
premiums will
quo.
stay the same. So, I mean, as far as if you pay for family or you pay for So we've held the line on that for employees. If the initial plan before COVID was that if we saw cost savings, I was going to bring a proposal to the board, and this is something else we can talk about in December, of doing some kind of wellness clinic for the employees, so that there's basically like a PA in the county, not our employee, because I don't want to take that on, but we contract for a PA so if you're an employee and you want to go, you have a sinus infection or you have a cold or something, you can go see this PA. It'd be free of charge to the employee. They wouldn't have to drive to Chesapeake or to even Grandy or to Elizabeth City, so we'd get them back to work quicker.
And they could prescribe prescriptions or something.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm still going to get the cost estimates for what that would be.
Yeah.
And it's a benefit that we might be able to give to employees that doesn't cost a whole lot in the grand scheme of things if our revenues come in. And, their dependents can go there. The other thing is with employees, if they'll go to there, because you're trying to incentivize them to go there, we could also require them to do blood sugar, blood pressure, weight screenings every year, so that if they've got some health issues we can head those off before they become major things. Because that's where your big claims come from. They come from chronic diseases by and large. So, but that's on the back burner too. So.
Okay.
And so I think that's the end of our Wednesday. So on Friday we will cover general fund and OC tax, and I'll present that to you guys, and then we'll have a first meeting in June. I'll formally present the budget, and then we'll have a public hearing, second meeting, and vote on second meeting in June is the plan.
And then adopted in July.
25 people in June?
Should be 50 by then.
Yes.
And at some point in June, hopefully it's back to normal. I mean, that's what I'm kind of hearing through the grapevine. Any other questions about the budget talks today?
Friday at
Today.
Friday night.
Okay.
And did you say about the YMCA thing by NAP that you're going to get?
It's fine, because I got the information I needed. If they're not open, it's fine.
All right,
So Leanne can reach out to Matt and let him know that's, yep.
Well, just use me. I'll call.
Right.
Got a nice
Question I'm going to ask about fireworks for all.
So we're going to need to probably have a discussion about that at the manager's report on Monday. Most other beach communities on the Outer Banks have canceled their 4th of July celebration.
No way.
No way.
Ain't happening.
Okay.
We're gonna fire the sky up.
As long as you all understand the crowd that will descend up Highway 12, that's fine. But there's no way to mitigate that.
We're going to checkpoint at the county line. If you're not staying at Currituck,
We're gonna.
not coming here.
We'll tell them to use the new bridge.
Step forward.
Boats will be filled out there, won't they?
Yep. And so the fireworks are July 3rd because of when it falls.
Right.
So what I'm hearing is that you guys want to move forward with our Independence Day celebration.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
We went on fireworks over on the beach and also over on the mainland. We had discussed that at one time.
6 feet apart.
Not this year.
I know
Not enough
Tim
money in the budget.
Posh is
Yeah.
thinking about doing this thing at
Eagle Creek.
Creek
Yeah.
again this year.
He said he was still doing
Now
it.
let me ask a question about the celebration, because we'll need to get a meeting together with emergency management. If you want to have the fireworks, are you wanting to have the whole thing with like the vendors and everything, or just fireworks?
Just fireworks for now and see where we are.
Just
in
fireworks.
Yeah. I want this late. The fireworks show is important to
If we
everybody.
say 3 weeks before, vendors are can come in, they'll be there.
Okay.
Yeah, that won't be a problem.
Right.
June. Yeah. I'm not working that, so I'm going to put that up to you.
This is Currituck.
That's fine.
We're gonna set the
We
way.
have, yes, didn't sign up to take a bullet 25 years ago for no reason to not celebrate 4th of July. So
All right.
neither did you,
I'm-
right?
can't-
I mean,
We're
okay.
done.
Thank you.